West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Colorado is blue, America's red. It all meets right here on the Jeff and Bill Show, where you're invited to be a part of the conversation. Phone lines are open. Give us a call at 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. Got a great show for you planned today. We're going to talk this pedestrian bridge that Jared Polis is going to quickly backpedal on, because even Channel 9 bringing about some pretty heavy criticism on this. This is down at Civic Center Park. We'll update you on the latest on that. Plus, the SPLC's got its latest hate groups out, which, surprisingly to me, the state that has now lost 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases and is facing a third for its anti-Christian bias, the state, surprisingly, not on the hate group list. But some other groups here in Colorado are groups that you might be familiar with. The SPLC is saying are hateful.
That's funny.
So
nicely done. That's funny.
You will also talk Ukraine-Russia war. The latest there is Donald Trump running into a roadblock with Putin, with Zelensky. What's going to happen? Was he a bit naive when it came to Putin, and how tough Putin can be to negotiate with on this? We'll get into a debate on that in the 7 o'clock hour. 8 o'clock hour, Colorado Public Radio joining National Public Radio in a lawsuit against Trump, cutting federal funding to NPR. CPR going, this is a violation of our free speech. We are entitled to your tax dollars. We'll get into that in the 8 o'clock hour. And then you may have seen the news accounts of what happened in Seattle. A parents group doing a protest against the transgender movement was interrupted by Antifa throwing things, trying to storm the stage, and then the mayor saying, well, the only reason they wanted to do that is because you Christians, well, you're too extreme, and you brought it upon yourself. Well, Pastor Russel Johnson, lead pastor of Pursuit Northwest, who is an active pastor up there, was at the event, is going to join us in the 9 o'clock hour. So, whole lot of news to cover today, but now it's time for your morning dose of news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, hump day 49, partly cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 67 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, another tornado touchdown in northeastern Colorado last night, 23 miles north of Fort Morgan. One resident of New Raymer said it went through his backyard. No injuries reported. Denver police searching for 2 children, 10 and 8 years old, last seen just after noon on Tuesday on foot and on a bike in the 500 block of North Alton Way in the Lowry neighborhood. The boy is black with brown hair and about 5'1", 170 pounds. The girl is black with brown hair and was wearing a pink shirt. 4'11", 130 pounds. Names are Honor and Honesty. Anyone with info, please call DPD. Well, this is what the big story will be probably today and throughout the week. A lot of attention to this. Elon, critical of the big, beautiful bill, did an interview with CBS this morning. That means CBS Sunday morning. I'm sorry, not this morning. We'll see it on Sunday, and here's a portion.
So, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
Okay, stay tuned.
Good for Elon.
That.
Good for Elon.
No, I agree. It's this is government and private.
It's a
sector.
debate. It's a debate within the family. Republicans have control. Republicans want more cuts. I get Jeff Crank, Gabe Evans, Lauren Boebert, Jeff Hurd's perspective on this. They all supported it, which is if we could get all the cuts we wanted, we would. But we've got to at least not continue Nancy Pelosi's budget priorities. So is it perfect? No. I mean, can the guys take another bite at the apple? Yeah, absolutely. With reconciliation, this thing's still going to get debated. We can put a little bit of pressure on the Senate Republicans to cut a little bit more on this. We could get some more cuts there, but they may have to go back with a different bill. And I appreciate Elon, raising this.
Yeah, same. It's all part of the process. I'm right there with you. If you just let everything fly, then that isn't what we want either. It's got to be critical, and he is critical of it. So is Rosie O'Donnell.
Billions of people are going to suffer as a result of the big, beautiful bill. So for God's sakes, call your senators right now and tell them, talk to some Republicans. Get the ones you've known for years and take them out to lunch and go, listen, dude, do you get this? Do you have a grandmother? Do you know what this is going to do to all the elderly in this country? Do you have any understanding of what's at stake? This is the most blatantly corrupt thing that Mango Mussolini has ever come up with. Honestly, very infuriating.
Is she still an American?
No.
I didn't even think she lives
That's
here
a good
anymore.
point. No, she's in Ireland.
Yeah.
And if you listen to her, she sounds like she's really sick. So it's not helping her to be in Ireland, evidently. So she's over there. She thinks everyone's going to die because no one's going to have Medicaid and Medicare. And she said hundreds of thousands of people. She may have said millions, actually. Millions are going to die in the first part of that. But, she's on the other extreme, of course.
I feel like all of our ancestors are looking down upon us going, you guys are such a bunch of wimps.
Right.
Are you kidding?
Exactly.
How did America get here without Medicaid?
Oh, my God.
250 years without Medicaid?
Yes.
It's only been around, 50, 60 years? But,
Exactly. Once again, you're gonna keep your Medicaid unless you're able-bodied,
right, and
you're 19 to 62, and you're not working, and you're playing video games, smoking dope, and eating crap, So, yeah, you're gonna be able to keep your Medicaid unless you're cheating the system. Boulder police have arrested a man on multiple charges after he went on a crime spree early Tuesday. A bus driver was assaulted in the 1400 block of Walnut. The suspect reportedly broke a door and smashed a window at two businesses on 13th Street. A short time later, a police officer saw the suspect assaulting a 74-year-old man at a bus stop later. 39-year-old Philip Matthew Clark was taken into custody and booked on charges including assault, harassment, criminal mischief, and failure to appear in court. The CDC is pulling back its guidance on COVID vaccines for pregnant women and healthy kids. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. announced the change in a video posted on Tuesday. The agency had previously recommended the vaccine for everyone 6 months and up. Thank God they did that. Yeah, thank God RFK Jr. did that. DJT says Canada could be protected by his Golden Dome missile defense shield for free if they become part of the 51st state. Trump made the announcement on Truth Social and claimed Canada very much wants to be a part of his proposed missile defense system. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. NBA Pacers do it again. They run past the Knicks, and they lead the Eastern Conference 3-1. The OKC Thunder try to eliminate the T-Wolves tonight in the West. 46 in Arvada, 47 in Littleton, 49 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Hump Day. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
With moist air residing along the Front Range, watch out for night and morning areas of patchy fog, otherwise partly cloudy skies with afternoon and evening. Scattered thunderstorms and showers today, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. Lesser thunderstorm coverage this weekend. Will be low to mid-70s today, only about 65 to 70 for Wednesday and Thursday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
This bridge does nothing right. Colorado's plan for pedestrian bridge draws heavy criticism. The CEO of Historic Denver says the bridge is completely unnecessary and out of place in Denver's historic Civic Center area. To celebrate, this is from 9 News, to celebrate the state of Colorado's 150th anniversary, the state plans to build a pedestrian bridge from the Colorado State Capitol winding around Lincoln Street to Lincoln Veterans Memorial Park. The bridge would stop short of Civic Center Park, and early feedback on the project is coming up well short of positive. The state announced last year that it planned to build the bridge for $18 million to $20 million using both private and public funding. But last week, the state released renderings of the pedestrian bridge, and the project now faces strong opposition. So let me describe this for you. It comes down from the steps, the west steps of the state capitol, and that's where there's a whole bunch of protests. Pretty much any time you see protests down at the state capitol, it's on the west steps of the capitol because there's a bigger courtyard area there. So it winds from there down the green lawn over Lincoln Avenue there, and then into this Veterans Park. It doesn't go all the way across Broadway, which is the next street over, into Civic Center Park, but it's like, I don't know, Bill, if you've seen it in the article.
Yeah, I saw it.
But it looks like a kid's rendering of a slide that they built from the Capitol down to the park. Like, so it winds like a snake
Yeah.
But it kind of winds down. It doesn't fit the architecture at all. And according to this article, part of the reason they want to do this is because when you have all these protests, and believe me, I've been down to dozens of these down at the state capitol, is you have people in that Lincoln Veterans Park that then have to cross over Lincoln Avenue. But in 5 years, there's been 5 incidents. And that's a busy road and lots of people and lots of protests. And you've only had 5 incidents. That's not a lot. And I just don't... I think this thing's going to crash and burn because it looks terrible.
It's just dumb. I mean, it's... This, to me, is an example of the government and the people involved in the planning of this assuming they're right because they're in the government and involved in the planning of this. The fact that they exist is proof of their importance of the project. And that's the thing here. It's just, here's the thing. Okay. How many of us have seen a building and in front there's a series of stairs, and it may be, 2 or 3 staircases, only like 8 or 9 steps each. Not horrible, but it's going to take some effort and time to get up there. To the right or left of that staircase, there is the ADA accessible ramp that goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and takes you up to the same place, eventually to enter the building. How many of us that don't have to use the ramp take the ramp? 0. Because it's less efficient. Because we're not going to walk back and forth and back and forth and back and forth when we can go straight. Yeah. That's the problem, is this entire concept of the pedestrian bridge fights against the basic fundamental decision making of a human. And I'm not talking about political party. I don't care. This is just not understanding human behavior. We want to go from point A to point B in the quickest amount of time. How many of us have been stuck in traffic and we see someone start running on the shoulder outside where traffic is because they want to get there faster? Straight line. Even better, how many people have been stuck in traffic on like a highway and you see the person in the 4x4 all of a sudden go down through the median and turn around and go the other way down the highway? Shortest distance between 2 points. Dude in the 4x4 wasn't going to wait for the off-ramp. He or she is going to take the straight line over to the other highway and drive away. That's human instinct and behavior. Unless we are doing this for pleasure and enjoyment, we don't take the long route. No one goes to their commute to work and says, how can I make this longer and more complicated? Can I please take more turns to do this? No. That's the dumbassery of this, is it works against basic human behavior. The assumption that instead of going down and, yes, sometimes taking your life into your own hands to cross the busy street, instead we're going to meander back and forth and take more time. Even if you're trying to avoid getting hit by the cars, the journey is shorter. That's all that's going to happen. This pedestrian bridge is going to be ignored by anybody other than tourists who don't know any better. That's it. Denver is going to use the crosswalk, and they will ignore the bridge. If they have to run underneath the bridge like trolls, it doesn't matter. Shortest distance between 2 points. That's human behavior.
It will make for interesting pictures for protesters, because it reminds me of some of the bridges in Chicago when the Palestinians would climb up on top and then the police would try to pull them down.
Yeah, exactly.
They were up there with their flags.
So it could be better for news coverage. Right. Yeah, we could get better visuals, but other than that.
Tyler and Golden, that bridge is a horrible idea. What, they think they'll walk over the riffraff? Clean up the riffraff and you wouldn't need the bridge. Ridiculousness at its finest. So a really good point pointed out in this article comes from John Deffenbaugh, the president and CEO of Historic Denver, who said the bridge is completely unnecessary and out of place in Denver's historic Civic Center area. According to the governor's office, the bridge, which was designed by an out-of-state firm, surprise, is intended
don't spend
to
that money
resemble.
Here. For God's sakes, don't actually spend money on architecture and design here. Why would you want to put the money into the Colorado economy? It's not like that's what you're responsible for or anything, but still, I digress.
This is setting Phil Weiser up well.
That's true. It is.
It's intended to resemble Colorado's flowing rivers. I'm just going to say it, says Jeff. Yeah. The bridge does nothing right. It doesn't take pedestrians from A to B in a way which is convenient for them. Bill, you and the CEO of Historic Denver.
Ridiculous.
It's a natural historic landmark. It's a historic district, Deffenbaugh said. There are several layers of policy documentation to protect the evolution of this site to ensure it evolves in keeping with its historic characteristics. The bridge plows right through everything that makes this park great. He points out that, it's kind of got this traditional look to it, right? We're really hopeful that it's going to be a ground level crossing experience with enhancements to crosswalks, enhancements to paving, really something to improve Lincoln and Broadway. Unfortunately, that's morphed into a huge raised overpass over Lincoln, which really just drops people off at the corner of Broadway and Colfax for no reason. Public reaction to the project has been overwhelmingly negative, with no positive comments appearing on Governor Jared Polis's Instagram post announcing the project, while dozens disapprove. On Facebook, there's a few positive comments, but overwhelmingly disapproved. The plan for the bridge is to fund it through a combination of private and public money. The state plans to fundraise to pay for a majority of the project. The goal is to have the bridge be less than half publicly funded. The state has already spent $1.5 million on design and concept costs.
With people that don't live here. Good job. That's fantastic. Even I could give them at least a little bit of empathy if they would have spent $1.5 million here. I mean, if there was an architectural firm, a design firm, someone pulling a paycheck here that's helping them pay the mortgage, helping them, send the kids to college. Okay, dumb money spent by the government, but we're not even spending any here. This is like dumb on several levels. Okay, anybody that has ridden light rail, I feel you. My apologies, but I do it too. Southmore Station, the park and ride is on the other side of the highway from where the tracks are. They built a tunnel under the highway. The tunnel's straight. It doesn't wander around. They could have, if they wanted to, made a little snaky thing, and you could go through, and you could see little pictures of Polis, or I don't know, you could do different stuff. They do have little interactive things in the tunnel that don't work all the time, but it's straight. When we're going to the mountains, the tunnels, Eisenhower and stuff, they're straight. That's kind of a hint that if we're going to go from one place to another, okay, my own life, my house, our house is on the corner on the block. Immediately around the corner is the mailbox. We've been in the house for a couple of decades. There is a path that is worn on our grass from us walking out the door and cutting across the grass to get to the mailbox. Could we take the longer route and go around and walk on the sidewalk? Yes. How much time are we saving? Maybe 20 seconds. Maybe. But there isn't a single person in my family that will use the sidewalk. And it's 20 seconds. You think any reasonable human is going to look at that bridge and go, obviously that's the best choice? No. We're just going to run across the street
now,
again.
If you actually made it a water slide, like a river, people might actually enjoy it.
Hell yeah, you made a slip and slide. Hell, do it like a zip line. Yeah, zip line from the steps all the way down to the, and you avoid the traffic. Oh, I'm on that zip line twice a day. Absolutely.
This is a really good point. This comes from Jeff Deffenbaugh, CEO of Historic Denver. Civic Center's design is based on symmetry, restraint, and elegance. It's one of the most complete examples of the City Beautiful movement in the U.S., and the building and structures around it are built in a Greco-Roman style. And this bridge represents none of that.
I love that. I love the idea that if you go back to his description of it and you're like, and you're saying the people in charge didn't make decisions based on that.
Right.
I'm so shocked. They weren't looking at elegance
and
or
it
symmetry.
Is pretty. I mean, like when you go down for the Christmas lights
Yeah.
at Civic Center Park,
It's
right?
gorgeous.
The Greco-Roman with all
Yeah.
the lights on it and all that. And then you get this winding
The winding
steel
steel.
contraption
Ridiculous.
to take you around. Historic Denver said it's also concerned that the design does not consider the area on the west part of the Capitol as a gathering point for civic protests. And then they also point out we have a time when many need to exercise financial restraint. We know there are issues in the city and county of Denver's budget and also the state's budget, yet we already spending $1.5 million on the design that is of this completely unnecessary bridge.
Here's the thing.
It is the bridge to nowhere.
Yes, it's the bridge to nowhere. And here's the thing is, we don't often on the Jeff and Bill show solve the city's problems, but today we are going to. We are going to solve the city's problem. And you want to spend this money and you want to do a pedestrian bridge and you want to make it something that's a focal point that people will come to and enjoy downtown. I'll do you one better. Here's what you do. Take all the money, and instead of doing the slip and slide and stuff across the street, what you do is you put, those slides I sometimes have in the mall where it's kind of a metal slide, but you sit on the carpets and you go down, they're kind of fast. And you remember the old indoor water slides they used to have. We're combining those two ideas in one. And what we're going to do is up at the top of the Golden Dome, when you walk all the way up there, we're going to install a slide. And it's going to allow you to go outside the Capitol and go in circles around the outside of the Capitol until you end up all the way down at the front steps. And it's going to, it'll be free once you get inside the Capitol to take it. And while you go around, it's going to be covered. So we can do it in the rain, in the snow. Also on the inside, we will do like digital things where you can have scenes of Colorado mountains. We can do advertising. You can do historical things. So you can have, and again, some of it will be open. So you can come by and see some of the stuff outside and look down at Civic Center Park. But that would actually be somewhat functional, rather silly and whimsical, but get more attention and probably a hell of a lot more use than the stupid pedestrian bridge, because who's going to say no to a fun slide? After you climb up all those stairs, fun slide all the way back down. Much more useful than this stupid pedestrian bridge.
This looks like something Homer Simpson would draw.
Yes,
so I'll post
so
this
does.
on X, like when
Yes, it
Homer
does.
made his car. It reminds me of
Yes.
that. Where it's like this beautiful Greco-Roman. Everything's
Yes.
like straight and aligned, and then there's just this slide.
Yes.
Now, Bill, there's not much. I don't think there's anything ever on this show where unanimously everybody
Never.
hates it.
Yeah, and usually it's my fault. Yes.
I mean, on this, right, left, everybody on the text messages. Everybody on the text messages
Crazy.
does not like this.
Okay.
So
in one way,
Polis has united the
Yeah,
state.
that's exactly where I was
in
going.
opposition.
He has united the state of Colorado. Finally, he is the governor that has brought unity to the state. Not the way intended. And still, isn't it completely perfect and a great example of not only is this a dumb bridge that isn't going to be used ever, but they went to people out of state in order to design it. That is the perfect self-own. That not only did we come up with this dumb bridge, we didn't even spend the money here. Just how stupid.
Did you see the Denver website was down all day yesterday?
Oh, no, really?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Is
Like
it because everybody's excited
Denver.gov
about the bridge?
But it just
Yeah.
goes to point out that apparently we don't have the money to pay.
No.
Did someone forget to renew
I hope-
the URL?
Oh, I
Whatever.
hope someone bought it. If so, I hope someone bought it. I hope so.
But we got 1.5 million on a terrible rendering of a bridge. There's no way this thing survives.
No, there's no way.
You're gonna watch Polis backtrack on this.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm always interested in watching politicians because you're pretty arrogant to get elected.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
To think I'm the best person to lead.
Yes.
Right? And so when they screw up this royally, where 100% of the comments on Jared Polis's
Like, this is
Instagram were
dumb.
negative on this one.
Oh, yeah.
And Instagram isn't a bastion of conservative activity.
No, not at all.
So 100% negative. He's going to have to backtrack. What does it look like? Is there an actual ounce of humility in the governor to go, you know what, guys? You're 100% right. I got this wrong.
Yeah.
I apologize. By the way, I'm worth a cool 30 million or whatever it is.
Exactly.
300. I think he's maybe 300 million. He's worth a lot of money. Go, I'll write the check, 1.5 million. I'm going to make this right with the Colorado taxpayer. Guys, again, my bad. we're not going to do anything like this.
That's the thing, is if he just comes out and says, oh, sorry. The thing you hit on there that I think is, and this is why I enjoy doing the show with you, this political genius, is writing the check out of his pocket, because it's almost nothing to him, but the goodwill and the mea culpa would go light years for rebuilding his image. Yeah. That would be something. I mean, to a T. I don't think that even just like you, a rocked rib Republican could look at Jared Polis after he wrote the check and goes, whoops, my bad, here's the money back for the and go, oh, well, okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
You still wouldn't like him.
Yeah,
but you'd go, okay, cool, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, you want to rebuild that legacy. You want to actually show that you're trying to be the governor for everybody. Yeah, I love that idea. He should write that check, and he's got enough. I mean, that's more than enough. He could easily do that. So this is just another example of the government sitting around and saying, well, we've got to be right because we're in charge. Yeah, that's
well
great.
done. Well, while Jared Polis may not be getting it right, let me tell you who's getting it right when it comes to air conditioning and heating. Our AC went out last summer. And boy, it's not fun in August when your AC goes out. Our line froze. And so we called out a number of people and they said, look, whoever built your house, which was before us, I think we're the third people to live in this house now, the AC is too small. It's working too hard to try to cool the house, and you need to upgrade it. And typically when you upgrade the AC, you got to upgrade the furnace. We talked to a number of different groups, figured it out. It was L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, and we went with them, and they absolutely delivered for us. One-day installation, no stress, personal service from start to finish. They followed up to make sure everything was perfect, our home comfortable no matter what the weather. And with L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, we even got more peace of mind. Here's some of the deals they're offering now. A free programmable thermostat or carbon monoxide detector with new furnace or air conditioner installation. That thermostat that we have installed, I can control with my phone. It's pretty nice. No emergency charges, $0 trip fee, price match value guarantee on equipment, free estimates, licensed and insured, and a 5-year labor warranty. Everything works great, and our family couldn't be happier. So if you're looking for fast, honest, reliable service, I highly recommend L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, 720-851-1691. Online at bestdenverhvac.com, bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called them. That number again, 720-851-1691. Coming up next on the Jeff and Bill Show, SPLC is out with their latest list of extremist groups in Colorado. Is the state of Colorado on it? They should be. We'll talk more next. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Want to buy bridge?
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Polis pedestrian bridge debacle. Jared Polis spent $1.5 million on a firm out of state to design a monstrosity of a pedestrian bridge down at Civic Center Park, universally panned in the state. Now the state wants to spend $20 million to build this useless bridge. Mark Crowley pointing out that this isn't the first time.
No, Jefferson County repeated this back in around 2011, and it's actually called the Bridge to Nowhere. He shared information with us, and I'd forgotten about this, that Jefferson County had a $3 million pedestrian bridge at Wadsworth Boulevard and Bowles Avenue that nobody uses, despite the fact the county called it a lasting asset. In fact, internal emails that have been discovered through Open Records Act has shown county officials were struggling to even justify the reason for the pedestrian bridge. And the lead engineer privately has admitted that there's really no point for it. It's really doesn't do anything. And some even county leaders, when challenged about the efficacy and the need for the bridge, didn't have a good answer. So they couldn't even really justify it, and nobody uses it. And they spent millions, $3 million to do it, and nobody takes the pedestrian bridge. That's the issue, is that there's no reason to take it. And so Jared Polis didn't do the research and look around the state and look at the Bridge to Nowhere. He could have just Googled Bridge to Nowhere, and he would have seen an example in the state. But instead, because he's in charge, he has to be right. Because, that's how it works in their minds. So because he's right and in charge, obviously, he found a firm out of state that designed a stupid-looking bridge that meanders all over the place because, when you're going out walking, the one thing you want to do is not go in a straight line. I mean, that's the part that kills me. That's where you knew that it was someone that is just designing this just because they want it to look pretty on the page rather than functionality. Because no one designs a community saying, can we make all the roads very twisty?
This is supposed to reflect a river here in Colorado. And I will say, on behalf of all river guides in the state of Colorado, this thing is ugly and nobody wants it.
Yes.
I spent 5 summers sitting on the back of a boat floating down Colorado's beautiful Arkansas River.
Yeah.
Nobody wants this thing. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It doesn't even reflect rivers very well.
And who in their life talks about the idea of, this highway system would be much more efficient if we replaced it with rivers? Nobody talks about the river being the most efficient form of travel, even in Huck Finn. While it does move things quickly, not the quickest or best form of travel. Even when they're doing river boats, it was an industry, people, and even then, seriously. And so, let's design it as a river. Yes, because that's exactly how people want to walk. Oh my God.
Well,
this is just ridiculous.
In other news of stupidity, the Southern Poverty Law Center's out with its list of hate groups. 33, this is the headline from the Denver Post, 33 extremist groups currently operate in Colorado.
Oh, boy.
All right, so let me help you educate you on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list, okay? Basically, if you're not a progressive organization, you more or less end up on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate group list, and they lump everybody together, right? So let's start with real, honest-to-God, hateful groups, like the KKK, like the neo-Nazis, okay? So it started out trying to cover groups like that. Lo and behold, if you're a conservative Christian organization, you are now finding yourself on the Southern Poverty Law Center hate list. Groups like Moms for Liberty. They did a big expose on Turning Point USA, Focus on the Family, Family Research Council. So SPLC lumps all of these groups together, says they're all hateful organizations. So Moms for Liberty, your little neighborhood mom that's concerned about the content of the books in the library, is now lumped together with crazy extremist groups like the KKK and the neo-Nazis. But I just want to point this out to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which I find rather surprising. Imagine a state went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, not once, not twice, but now thrice, based upon its bigotry towards Christians. You might find them on the hate group But no, not in this case. The state of Colorado persecutes a baker like Jack Phillips for a decade. Lori Smith has to go fight for her rights at the U.S. Supreme Court. Now you got a third case heading up over conversion therapy and what they're compelling Christian counselors to do. That's heading to the U.S. Supreme Court this fall. Then you have Idra Haji. You have little Catholic preschools suing the state. Colorado, clearly hateful towards Christians. I mean, so much so that it goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court 3 times. But surprisingly, they're not on the SPLC hate list. So when you see the headlines, the only reason I'm pointing this out, when you see the headlines about extremist groups operating in Colorado, take it with a grain of salt. Recognize that the SPLC is politically motivated, and anybody that's not to the left of, a communist dictator is thrown on this list. So
yeah, and also understand this is that when you're going out there and you're picking your clothes and you see things like one size fits all, or you get those socks that say like size 6 to 13, and depending on which end of the spectrum you're on that, they really don't fit. That's what the Southern Poverty Law Center does, in my opinion, is a one size fits all. I appreciate their writings and I always pay attention to them because of their perspective. I just want to see where they're coming from. But Jeff's absolutely 110% accurate that the biggest disservice they do to themselves is one list. And when you see things like the KKK next to Focus on the Family, a reasonable person, you may disagree with Focus on the Family, but their underlying goals and motivations and such aren't on the same level as the KKK. And when you see them lumped in the same group, you start to question the filter and the parameters of the group that is putting them together. If they would bifurcate this group, or even just make it several different silos and say, here are people that are concerned about this and we think they're a threat. Here are people that are more of a threat. Here's groups that are even more of a threat. That would give them a heck of a lot more standing and credibility. But when they just have one list, it's the one size fits all. I'm not a fan of one size fits all clothing, and I'm not a fan of one size fits all descriptions or one size fits all laws. I don't think that they work, and I think the Southern Poverty Law Center does themselves a disservice here. And I honestly, like you're saying, Jeff, I believe that it is motivated by politics, because it would be easy for them to silo out some of these groups, because even they would put them on a continuum. But because, in my opinion, because they can put the KKK on there and then lump in all these other groups that are definitely not nearly as close to on the hate spectrum as the KKK, people like the Moms for Liberty, people like Focus on the Family, I think they're trying to do guilt by association, and that's where I hate, and I think you're accurate about the politics, is they could easily put this into silos, but they choose to put those names next to the KKK because they want to dirty them by having them on the same list, and you're right about that.
It's the poison the well fallacy.
Yep, you're exactly right.
Poison the well fallacy. So keep that in mind. All right, let's talk our friends over at Advanced Hair Restoration. If you're losing your hair, you need a simple solution that works. You want the best modern technology with top-rated physicians, something that's guaranteed to work. Guys, you need Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. They've completely redefined hair restoration from the experience itself to their unmatched results. You got a receding hairline, bald spot, or thinning hair, address them all with Advanced Hair's simple one-day treatment in a calm, relaxed environment with the most experienced professionals. Advanced Hair has performed tens of thousands of these breakthrough treatments, and get this, your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day. No one in Denver can offer anything like the advanced FUE found at Advanced Hair, and I highly recommend their team. It all starts with your free consultation. Call 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you'll get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Refine your hairline with the team that's redefined hair restoration. 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. 720-459-HAIR, advancedhair.com. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's that time of the morning where we bring you a little bit of levity with You Choose the News.
Yes, and shout out to Ron, who just called off the air. Didn't have time to hang with us because he's driving to work and, making the monies. But also talked about the Southern Poverty Law Center and wanted to know about, things like Black Lives Matter and other protests that got violent during that summer, whether or not they were classified as hate group. Of course
not on there.
Yeah, why not? Well, let's leave the hate behind and be a little silly. Thanks for the caller on. This is America's favorite fake radio news game show. You Choose the News. Yes, I have spent mere moments this morning scouring the interwebs for dumb stories about us humans, giving them even more ridiculous headlines so we can play this fake radio news game show. Why would we do something like this early in the morning? Well, because nobody in charge is awake yet. Yes, this is what happens when Jeff and I are left unsupervised, which is why they always send people out with us to IHOP, because they're afraid of what would happen. And they're probably right. Yes, so Blake Olson, we have dragged him into this frivolity in order to have a way to shift the blame, honestly, but he doesn't know that. So here is how this works. I am going to read the stories, and the gentlemen are going to pick the choices this morning. Okay, Jeff Hunt in the studio, Blake Olson in the newsroom. Here are your headlines, gentlemen. Headline number 1, hide and seek. Headline number 2, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Headline number 3, is it because they have no soul? And headline number 4, prescription for success.
Let's start with the prescription for success.
Yeah, prescription for success. The federal court has sentenced Judge Jorge Zamora-Quezda, a 68-year-old rheumatologist from South Texas, to 10 years in prison. Why? Well, a long-running healthcare fraud scheme involving false diagnoses. He billed more than $118 million in fraudulent claims over a decade and made people undergo treatments for stuff they didn't have. This is crazy. In fact, some of the fraud lasts more than 2 decades. It includes minors with chronic autoimmune conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis. The scheme basically allowed him to diagnose people for things they didn't have and then bill for costly tests and treatments, some of which were actually painful and hurt the people because they didn't need them. Some were just injections, x-rays, MRIs, but some people that testified in the case said he felt like a lab rat and felt debilitating pain. Some patients testified they suffered side effects from the treatments like strokes, liver damage, necrosis of the jawbone, hair loss, and chronic debilitating pain. The doctor said, I got paid, didn't I? Yeah. Money, money, money. Yes. So again, he was false diagnosing people and got paid for it. The healthcare system in action. That's great.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Prescription for success.
Yes, exactly. Just take the blue pills. Everybody complains about the blue pills. My favorite quote from Where the Buffalo Roams. All right. Now, Blake Olson, sir, your choice. Hide and seek. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Or is it because they have no soul?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Recently, Anthropic, easy for me to say. Can I have a vowel, please, and spin the wheel? Okay.
That's a tough one.
Artificial intelligence from Anthropic tested its new system, Claude Opus 4, and found out that Claude was willing to blackmail people if he thought he was going to be turned off. Yes, he showed a prevalence for self-preservation. What they did is, in order to test Claude Opus 4, they made it act like an assistant to a fictional company. They then provided it to access to fictional emails and implied that there were decisions going back and forth between the higher-ups that maybe they would take Claude offline and replace it with a different AI. In these emails, one of the engineers involved was also revealed to have a fictitious affair. Well, when given the choice about his imminent demise, Claude chose to tell the engineer, I'll reveal the affair through the emails if you choose to turn me off. Yes. So he was showing self-preservation, just like Hal in 2001. Yeah. A little bit of trivia.
Right.
Why is Hal called Hal?
I don't know.
Stands for something.
Yes, it does. It's IBM. All those letters are one letter away from IBM.
Oh, wow.
So literally, that's the reason Hal is Hal. It's IBM.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Again, I can't do long division, but I know the stupid stuff like that. That's of no use. No help at all. Long division would be helpful. All righty, final choice this morning, sir. Jeff Hunt, hide and seek, or is it because they have no soul?
Because they have no soul.
Yes, is it because they have no soul? After decades of mystery, new research has shed light on exactly why we have orange cats. It's the same genetic. It's not the same, but it's a similar genetic mutation as we have in humans to get red hair. Now we know in humans when they have red hair, it's because they have no soul. Is it the same for kitties? No, it's not. They actually do have souls. What it is, it's basically it's a mutation that exists on the X chromosome, meaning that most orange kitties are male because they only need one copy. The females need 2 copies, one on each one of the X chromosomes, but it is a unique mutation that is different than the red hair mutation that is in humans. Yes, it mutates in a completely different way and affects pathogens as far as the coloring of the hair. In fact, if you see tortoise shell or calico cats, those are actually female cats that only have 1 copy of the red hair mutation. You need 2 copies in order to get an orange female tabby. Yes, so... yeah,
Billy,
so that's why.
Billy, thank you for making me feel so much smarter this morning.
That's my goal in life. It's little things you can drop on people and say, here you go, man. Yeah. Every once in a while I can make you smarter. Most of the time, just angry. That's the end. That's You Choose the News. Back to you, Mr. Hunt.
All right, coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, Ukraine-Russia war. What is the latest on that? Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Zelensky, all of it. We'll debate. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Well, it's 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Colorado's blue, America's red. It's all united here on the Jeff and Bill Show in opposition to Jared Polis's bridge to nowhere. We covered that in the last hour. Today, though, in this hour, we're going to cover Ukraine, Russia, Trump, Putin. Donald Trump has warned Vladimir Putin that he's playing with fire, launching a fresh broadside against his Russian counterpart over stalled Ukraine peace efforts. Trump's latest comments come after he called the Kremlin leader, crazy over the weekend following a mass Russian air attack on Kiev, and warned that Moscow risks new sanctions. What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would be happening to Russia. I mean, really bad. He's playing with fire. Trump did not specify what really bad things were or make any specific threats, but the Wall Street Journal and the CNN reported that Trump was now considering fresh sanctions against Russia as early as this week, while stressing he could still change his mind. What's going on with these negotiations? Bill and I are going to discuss this and would love to have you join the conversation. Is Trump getting anywhere in these peace negotiations with Ukraine and Russia, United States, or is he coming to terms with the fact that Putin really is just this bad? We got to implement new sanctions and get a lot tougher on Russia. What would you like to see? 303-696-1971. More importantly, how do you get peace out of this without launching World War III? Vladimir Putin's got a lot of nukes. Can you just assassinate the guy? Text line 720-819-5115. Now it's time for your morning dose of news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Hump day, 50 degrees, partly cloudy in Denver. Expecting a high of 67 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, late spring weather once again. And another tornado touchdown in northeastern Colorado last night, 23 miles north of Fort Morgan. One man in New Raymer said it went through his backyard. No injuries reported. The Trump administration has ordered U.S. embassies to stop scheduling appointments for student visas. Tuesday's decision comes as the administration prepares to introduce social media screening for foreign students. The CDC is no longer recommending the COVID vaccine for children and pregnant women. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. made the announcement in a video Tuesday. Previously, the CDC had recommended the vaccine for everyone 6 months and older. The story that's going to get most of the attention the rest of the week, Elon critical of the big, beautiful bill, did an interview with CBS. We'll see it on Sunday. Here's a portion.
So, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
All right. Once again, that's coming up this weekend. Tragic story over the weekend. Last weekend, Air Force Academy prep school basketball player Ava Moore was kayaking on Grapevine Lake in Texas, in North Texas, hit by a personal watercraft and killed. Thought that was the end of the story, but no. As Jeff let me know, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced that 2 illegals from Venezuela have been arrested in connection with the killing of the 18-year-old cadet who was getting ready for basic training
terrible.
in the academy. Just
hit her with a jet ski, then fled.
Yes.
The scene.
Yeah, they left.
Surprise,
Got away
surprise,
once. What a
illegal
shocker.
Venezuelans.
Yep. And, this is why I hear all the time, oh, Blake, that could have been anybody who did not. Well, maybe not. Possibly. But maybe it wouldn't have happened if maybe they were trained correctly or they knew something about it. Or
just shouldn't have been in this country.
Shouldn't be
and
here.
And this
Thank
is what Ken Paxton said. Ava Moore's senseless death was caused by an illegal alien who should have never been in our country in the first place. Here you have a young lady living in Colorado, killed, getting ready to head to the Air Force Academy.
Yep. It's horrible.
Senseless.
Oh, it's just so sad. I mean, so the prep school is just south. It's on the academy grounds. It's just south of the academy. She was, excited to go to
She's
the
about
academy.
ready to serve our country.
Yep, basic training.
About to lay down her life to defend our freedoms.
Yep.
Illegal immigrants never should have been here. Kill her. Take off running. Don't stick around.
Yep, no accountability. God. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's what we have. That's the craziness that you have. Just flee. Oh man.
This could be the next
family.
Lake and Riley story. It should be.
Oh yeah, it should be. But yeah,
Ava Renee Moore.
Ava Moore.
Yep.
That's right. That is right.
Say her name.
Amen. Pray for her family in Grapevine, Texas. DPD has placed naloxone vending machines outside 3 police stations. This new initiative is part of a years-long partnership with the Naloxone Project, which was started in Colorado by Dr. Don Stater in 2021.
We have an antidote that is easy to use and that can effectively reverse the effects of fentanyl or an opioid. What is important for all of us to do is to put this out in the community in the most efficient way possible.
All right, so he spoke on Tuesday as vending machines were installed at stations in Districts 2 and 6 and outside the police administration building. These machines are being stocked by the Naloxone Project. The group hopes to lower overdose deaths by providing the free kits. The locations for 3 machines was determined by overdose data compiled by the nonprofit. Federal prosecutors are not going to seek the death penalty for one of El Chapo's sons. Joaquin Guzman Lopez faces drug trafficking and money laundering charges alongside 3 of his brothers. He's pleaded not guilty. The charges follow the conviction of their father, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who's serving a life sentence in the U.S. Thunder tried to eliminate...
These, real quick, these cartel families, because I was hanging out with the DEA, they're starting to turn themselves in.
Are they?
Oh, yeah. They're getting on airplanes, flying into America, going, all right, we don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. Because they know the heat that's coming down on them in ways that Mexico has never seen before. These cartels have never seen before. So, like the wives, the kids...
Oh wow!
They're starting to turn it over.
That is a big deal. That's huge. All right, the Thunder, they try to eliminate the T-Wolves tonight in Oklahoma City. Pacers beat the Knicks again last night and lead the Eastern Conference Series 3-1. 48 in Arvada, 48 in Glendale, 50 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
With moist air residing along the Front Range, watch out for night and morning areas of patchy fog, otherwise partly cloudy skies with afternoon and evening. Scattered thunderstorms and showers today, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. Lesser thunderstorm coverage this weekend. Will be low to mid 70s today, only about 65 to 70 for Wednesday and Thursday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
So I'm intrigued what Trump's trying to do with Putin right now. This is from The Guardian. Trump warns Putin he's playing with fire after Russian attack on Ukraine. It's kind of hard to follow the back and forth and exactly who owns what land, all that. But bottom line, things are ramping up in Ukraine. Russia controls about 20% of Ukraine right now. And in negotiations, they're saying, we get to keep all of it. We don't want Ukraine joining NATO. And that's what's necessary for us to get to peace. Ukraine going, no, you don't get to keep 20% of Ukraine. And I think they're willing to kind of delay the NATO thing, but 20%'s a lot. Russia launching a series of drone attacks. Donald Trump has warned Vladimir Putin that he's playing with fire, launching a fresh broadside at his Russian counterpart over stalled Ukraine peace efforts. Trump's latest comments came after he called the Kremlin leader crazy over the weekend following a mass Russian air attack on Kiev and warned that Moscow risked new sanctions. What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things have already happened to Russia. I mean, really bad, Trump said on his Truth Social network on Tuesday. He's playing with fire. So, look, obviously, Trump said he was going to try to get this thing done early on in his administration. It's well over 100 days. He hasn't been able to do it within 24 hours, like he said. But I'm not sure Putin wants Trump turned against him as much as Trump seems to be going. And I agree with Trump that Putin's playing with fire here. Trump went into these negotiations going, okay, all right, I get, like, Zelensky's in the White House, wants to assassinate Vladimir Putin, wants his pound of flesh. I get it, right? Especially after what Ukraine's gone through, that the leader of Ukraine wants serious retribution for what Russia has done to it. I understand that. When you're trying to negotiate peace, it's not always best to have the guy that's been the most victimized sitting at the table when you're trying to get this thing done. I don't want this thing to end up in World War III. My biggest concern is that America's sons and daughters are going to be shedding blood in another faraway land to deal with this type of craziness that's taking place. Okay? And I also haven't bought into the idea that Vladimir Putin in Russia has been some great place to live, because I used to represent persecuted Christians, and I know for a fact there isn't religious freedom in Russia, right? You can't do street evangelism. It's a challenge to open new churches, all that stuff. Okay? So it's not a perfect conservative world in Russia, the way that some, even have texted in on our text line, have argued. All right, this is a messed up place. Ukraine, this whole thing is messed up. I don't want to end up in World War III. But I think Putin had an opportunity to get a negotiation done early on in the Trump administration. That seems to be waning right now. I don't think Vladimir Putin wants to be on the wrong side of a frustrated Donald Trump. You could see more sanctions coming. You could lose the guy altogether. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting a guy that's willing to get a lot more aggressive, starting to side with Zelensky. I think Putin's got to wake up here and figure this thing out. But, Bill, you and I were talking off air. You brought up a really good point. Trump's a business guy. He could just walk away from the whole thing. Right? I thought
that was
I thought that was a really interesting point. Share your perspective.
Yeah, I think Trump is transactional, and I believe that part of what Trump wanted with the Ukraine-Russian war is he felt he could come in and do this as a business deal. And he could negotiate with Vladimir and say, okay, you get to keep this land and you get what you want, which is no NATO membership. I mean, Secretary Hegseth already gave that up. I mean, without a single negotiation, Secretary Hegseth ceded all of that to Russia. And my impression is it's a transaction. Trump is trying to make a land deal. That's what he's trying to do. This isn't about sovereignty. This isn't about two different countries. This isn't about fighting each other. This is, at the core, I believe Trump is looking at this as a land deal. And if he can't get these two people together to make the deal, he's just going to wash his hands of it and walk away. I think at this point, that is the most likely scenario, is he's going to say, well, sorry, I can't do it. And he'll just ignore his promises about being able to settle it. He'll ignore the promises about what he said that Joe Biden couldn't do and was unable to do. And, I think I want to talk to just for a second about what Joan from Lakewood, she was on yesterday, so she couldn't join us on the air, but she thinks that Putin is suffering from an illness like cancer or something else that could be terminal, so he doesn't have anything to lose. So he is trying to cement his legacy. And whether or not he's suffering from a terminal disease, I think there's some truth in that. I think that Trump and many other people in the U.S. have not understood Vladimir Putin's core motivations for doing this, understood why he's doing this. And I also think that, unfortunately, the GOP was lulled into a little bit of a false sense of security because during the Biden administration, the thing that we always heard was there weren't any wars under Trump. Nobody invaded anybody under Trump. Trump is a big, powerful man that is going to bring all of these dictators to heel because he is such a strong, powerful ruler. That is being torn apart.
So here, look, when we were having this debate, Bill, you would often say, what has happened to the Republican Party, the party of Reagan, fighting the Russians and the Soviets and all that. Okay. I think Trump wanted to come in with a fresh perspective. Okay. But look at when Trump gets motivated for something, when he gets frustrated by it, he just doesn't care anymore and he'll go right at it. Think about what Trump has achieved that Reagan was never able to, right? The shutting down of the Department of Education, the defunding of NPR, those type of things. Republicans talked about that for decades. Trump comes in and delivers it in the first 100 days.
Has he delivered it, though? Hang on. And this is important because he delivered it? We'll get to this later.
He's facing lawsuits.
But the reason being,
he has pushed that way further than Reagan ever did, than Bush ever did, than Romney ever would have.
But the caveat I'll put on that is because he's done it through executive order. Any one of those leaders could have done it through executive order.
They never did.
Because they understood they don't have the power through executive order. When the Department of Education, when the Department of Education is created through an act of Congress and is codified into law, the executive branch cannot invalidate that law simply through an executive order. And that's what we're going to find out through court.
I don't think that was the reason why those guys didn't do it. I think they were politically nervous in order to push it as far as Trump did. But the point being, at least what I'm trying to make here, is, all right, Putin, you got a little bit of wiggle room with a new administration that was willing to kind of give this a fresh perspective. But if Trump gets angry at you, gets frustrated, if you're a law firm that was politically opposed to him, if you were any part of his enemy, he is willing to use his power to go after you in ways that other Republicans never have, that Joe Biden wasn't able to do. So I could, and I think there's a window here to still try to get a peace negotiation. But if Putin gets Trump on the wrong side, I think you could see a forceful Trump against Putin, Bill, that Reagan didn't have against the Soviet Union. I think you could see a directive of U.S. might and force against Russia that they haven't ever seen. That's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I don't think that at all, because I don't believe that Trump is the strong man that everybody believes he is. And you referenced the law firms that went against him. He's lost 3 of those cases so far.
But he's willing to do it. He's willing to do it. Just because the left takes every judge and throws everything at him to try to stop that doesn't mean he's not willing to do it.
No, but the issue is that it is illegal what he's doing for the law firms, and that's why you have the court system. And Trump wants to rule like a king, and he's not. And Vladimir Putin is not a subject. And does not matter what Donald Trump thinks of Vladimir Putin, what America thinks of Vladimir Putin is fairly irrelevant. I mean, that's the problem here. What's the leverage?
If Trump brings the weight and might and the force of the United States against Putin, would you support it?
In what way? What do you mean by bringing the weight and might and force?
Let's game it out, right? Let's start with sanctions. Would you support stronger sanctions against Russia?
Yeah, I've been talking about stronger sanctions for years.
Because Trump's now doing it.
That's nothing.
Or wants to do it.
Yeah.
And if he brings about those stronger sanctions, you would support him?
Yes, but again, we'd have to make sure that Trump follows through, because we've seen his behavior on the tariff so far, that I'm going to threaten something and then not do it, then threaten it and not do it, and threaten and not do it. That's not going to work. And I'd love to see what those sanctions exactly are and how that would work. The Wall Street Journal had an interesting idea in the last 24 hours that does have some merit, saying that if Trump wanted to be serious about this, what he says is any nation that buys oil or gas from Russia will receive an immediate 500% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. That'd get attention. Would it stop all of it? No, but it would get attention, and that is probably the largest stick based on sanctions that he could use at this point. There's not a heck of a lot else he could do internationally.
Here's the argument I'm making, and you could be wrong, and I want to hear from our callers on this, okay? I think Donald Trump is inching towards the exact guy that the Ukraine supporters have wanted all along. I think he is about to become that guy because he's grown really frustrated with Putin, and Trump tends to fight in a way that other Republicans haven't, and he could very well become the exact guy you wanted him to be all along.
Does he become Joe Biden?
I think he becomes stronger than Joe Biden.
And the reason I asked that question in specifically that way is because in order to do this, in order to become that strong defender that you believe he is, he has to go against his own party. His own party that said we shouldn't be sending money, we shouldn't be sending assistance, we shouldn't be doing anything to support Ukraine. This is not our fight. He is going to have to overcome the Marjorie Taylor Greens and other people in his own party that for more than 4 years have been saying we shouldn't be fighting and Ukraine is wrong. There are people in his own party that floated the idea that Ukraine started the war. Donald Trump has said that Ukraine started the war. That's not correct. And now he's going to be the strong man? I'm sorry. Color me bemused and incredibly skeptical, because in part, the very first steps he's going to have to take are steps Joe Biden was doing and his own party disagreed with. His own party tried to pull the funding from Ukraine, and now he is going to have to increase it, because if he doesn't go back to the funding and assistance, it's U.S. boots on the ground. And that is not something Trump is going to want to have to propose to his party right now, let alone America.
We'll have to see if I don't think he wants boots on the ground. I'm not sure he has to get to that, but I think he could be a lot tougher on Putin, and I think that's exactly what Ukraine supporters wanted to see all along. And what are they going to do when Trump becomes a big, strong defender of Ukraine? Join the conversation. Would love to hear from you. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Did Trump get Putin wrong in his early analysis of it?
And did Putin get Trump right? Did Putin know exactly who Trump was and played him? Did he
play him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, he played him.
Did Trump try to negotiate with him, and now he's about to face the reckoning of DJT? Woo, boy. Would love to hear from you. All right, let's talk Dan Caplis with our good friend Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. Look, I've known Dan for well over a decade. He has delivered for the people of Colorado. He's pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. He's right there with us on the values, and he's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to getting justice and helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. In fact, Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted, he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplislaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. Donald Trump saying Vladimir Putin is playing with fire after Russian attack on Ukraine. Do you support Trump getting tougher on Putin? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Trump warning Putin he's playing with fire after Russian attack on Ukraine. It seems to be getting tired of him. What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, Trump says, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia, and I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. Trump exploring possibly new sanctions upon Russia. He has not done that yet. It's been about 100+ days into the new administration. I see, I kind of considered him wanting to come in with a fresh perspective, hoping to negotiate peace. Nobody, at least here in America, I think wants World War III. But Putin really testing Trump's patience at this point. And those that want a stronger response to Russia in support of Ukraine, should they be supporting Donald Trump in a more aggressive posture towards Putin? Let's go to the phone lines. Richard Littleton. Good morning, Richard. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Hi, good morning, Jeff and Bill. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Super. Well, I kind of agree with both of you guys, but I thought I would share some insights. I deal a lot in international relations, and there's some things that we don't understand about Putin and what he's doing, whether he's dying of something or whether he's just old. I'm not sure is terribly important, but he has stated for many years, and they're much like the Chinese, that their goal, his goal in Russia, is to reunite the Eurasian people. So he's not just his vision is not just for Russia expanding back into former Soviet bloc countries, but it's expanding into Ukraine to prove that they can do it. Then they will be going into the Baltics, and then their next shot would be to Germany. Germany and every other European country is very, very nervous right now, knowing that they've underfunded their military for decades and that the U.S. has paid for it. And they have about 5 or 7 years it's going to take them to get caught up. He's not going to wait on that. So their concern is he's going to keep moving forward. Because if he waits 5 or 7 years, it's going to be much more difficult for him to take over the rest of the continent. But they are concerned that his goal is to go all the way to Portugal.
That's interesting, Richard. I read something, and I'm sorry, I watched a video yesterday of someone that does international relations and strategic information and stuff, and their idea was that if we let Putin take Ukraine, where he's salivating next is Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, because of access to the waterways and because they're smaller and because, again, incrementalism. I can get the little guys and then I can come after the big guys, but that also gives them a window into the western part of Europe.
Now, Richard, I want to ask you, the perspective I've heard from Moscow is that, no, this was a response to NATO's growth towards Ukraine. So imagine the United States responding to the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? We don't want you this close to our border. We don't want to march all the way to Portugal. This is about protecting our sovereignty and the growth of NATO up against our border. What's your response to that?
Well, I think that's partly true. A lot of this is meant to cloud what's really going to happen. Ukraine would never qualify to be a member of NATO. They never have been, never would be. It's a very, very unlikely that they would become a member. They were essentially a criminal state before the war, right? We were not very good friends with Ukraine. They were siphoning money. They were, that was part of what Biden was actually helping with. And he was trying to make them a more normal group, but he was doing it through means that were probably
criminal themselves.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that, but probably something along those lines. And so, admittedly, this war would not have started if Biden was a stronger president. The reason that they went in is they had no pushback. Biden wasn't going to help. In fact, we funded their war. I don't want to share background, but because of the delay, Putin was able to make an additional $600 billion in transactional volume by selling oil at an increased price because of the threat of war. So he loved that. He loved everyone being scared and the price going up, and he's selling into China, loaded up, African countries loaded up everywhere. Europe was concerned. They loaded up, all buying oil from him. That increase, the difference between the $52, $60 a barrel and the $90 a barrel, funded the first year of the war. That was done by our ill management and our slowness to react. The strength that we have now is good. The negative is I don't think that we fully understand, and we're sending in people. So I'm on both sides here for you guys. One is that we do have strong leadership, and we desperately need it from the White House side, but we don't have the kind of impact and the leadership and discussions with Putin. His people know their history for the past 100 years. They know the mission for the next 20 years. We don't. We're looking at it as, and I think as you had commented, as a land deal. And in some ways it is a land deal, but it has to be, it's not a, if we don't like doing this deal, we'll go do another one somewhere else. They have one deal that they're focused on for the next 20 years, and it includes the Baltic states, and then it includes moving west. And that's all they're focused on.
Now,
anything
Richard,
else?
Got a question for you. How much did the erosion of the NATO allies and that agreement, in your opinion, play into Putin taking advantage of going after Ukraine? And what I'm looking at is, during a little bit of the Biden administration and previously, NATO has been watered down, in my opinion, and there was some fractures. There was a lot of things with Trump talking about, you've got to pay your way, you've got to do this, or we're not going to protect you. And there was even some talk of Trump pulling out of NATO. And NATO has been, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, alliances as far as military and political that we've seen in recent history and even long history as far as effectiveness. But it was watered down and weakened over the previous decade or so. Did that fracture inside of NATO allow Putin, in your opinion, some of the space to think that he has an opportunity here to go after Ukraine and possibly expand his empire? And before anybody thinks that I'm only throwing rocks at Trump, I want to remind everyone that I still hold Barack Obama responsible for some of this with the idea of letting him annex Crimea, because I think that was the first step in the puzzle. But what do you think about the idea of how NATO was being fractured prior to the war? How much did that play into Putin's aggression in your mind?
Well, it's a great point, and I think you're correct on all points. I think that one is that the downhill began with Obama. NATO has been dramatically reduced in its strength and effectiveness since that time. We have come in and tried to subsidize that ineffectiveness monetarily, but what's happened is socially, politically, throughout that, the whole region has gotten weaker as a result of that. And so much like the World Food Program and a lot of other organizations, is we've created a dependency, and that dependency has made all of those organizations ineffective and not sustainable on their own. And now we're going back saying you need to be sustainable. You can't just flip the switch and tell them that they need to be sustainable. It's going to require it's a tough time, because I spend 4 months a year in Africa, and you now have a lot of countries that are working to create their own sustainable, resilient futures, and they're not going to be able to get the dollars from Europe, because Europe's going to have to do it for themselves now. They're going to have to pull back a lot of those dollars and rebuild from the weakness that's in there, kind of as you said. So I agree with you on both points. I think that Obama really started it and put us on a downhill track. I think that Biden open the door wide for Putin to come in and do what he's doing. But the approach that Trump is taking right now is he needs to be aggressive, but he needs to understand that he can't just tell Europe to take it on and they have to deal with it. They can't. If they take it on, they will lose.
Richard,
that's the challenge.
I mean, I really appreciate your perspective. I mean, on the ground expertise, man. Love the fact that we have callers like you that call and give us some guidance. Richard Littleton, thank you for the time this morning.
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
May I give you one reference to
please,
to look at? One is I would look at a fellow named Professor Dugin, Dugin. If you read any of his information, he's traveling around the world now speaking kind of on behalf of Russia, telling all these other leaders in Brazil and Latin America and Western Europe that this is the plan and that it's the stable thing to do for the continent of Europe. And he is built on pagan ideologies from many, many years ago, and Putin is a huge fan of his. So if you want to find out about how Putin thinks, read the work done by Professor Dugin, D-U-G-I-N.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that.
Richard Littleton, great call. His line will be open, 303-696-1971. All right, I know Memorial Day was last weekend, but our good friends at Mountain High Appliance are continuing this through June 4th. Their Memorial Day savings are hot right now. It's a perfect time to upgrade your kitchen or finally start that remodel you've been dreaming about. Right now at Mountain High Appliance, you can save up to $3,800 on stunning cafe appliances featuring customizable hardware and bold show-stopping finishes. Take advantage of these limited-time offers. When you think appliances, think locally owned Mountain High Appliance. Again, our friends at Mountain High Appliance with a $3,800 savings on cafe appliances featuring customizable hardware and bold show-stopping finishes. All right, let's go. Oh, we lost our phone call. We were just going to go to Richard.
Yeah, we were.
All right, Richard, feel free to give us a call back. Would love to hear from you as well. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971. Trump getting tougher on Putin. Is this all part of the negotiations? Do you find a way forward on this? My analysis, at least looking into what Russia wants, I'm not sure what they're going to expect by holding on to 20% of Ukraine's land. I don't think they're going to get to keep that. I'm sorry. I don't think Trump is going to allow that to happen, but they're set on it. 20% belongs to us. So what do you do?
But didn't Hegseth say they already did? I mean, that was Hegseth before the negotiations said Putin's going to get to keep the land. And
all
no
of
NATO.
It? All
yeah.
20%
Yeah.
of the land?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what he said in that original statement. That's why there was so much blowback. Is because he said
there should be peace today.
He's going to get to keep it.
Should be peace today.
So maybe the Trump administration was wrong, weren't they? Yes.
Or,
yes, they were.
Or maybe
Yes.
maybe he wasn't.
Yes, they were.
I'm not sure he said that, but
Yeah,
I could be wrong. I'll look into it.
Yeah, he did. He said they're not going to. He said that Zelensky. The issue was he was talking about Zelensky. It's like Zelensky has to come to the issue that he's not getting the land back and that you're not going to join NATO. Yeah, and that's before any negotiations
NATO,
started.
And you heard that from who was it?
Oh yeah,
the guy that just called.
Yeah, Richard. Yeah.
But that NATO's not going to join. But I'm not sure about the land. If Russia was going to get to keep all 20% of the land, then it seems like all terms have been met and we have peace today.
Well, or that's not really what Putin wanted. Because, again, are we coming to the table assuming we know the goal of Vladimir Putin? Vladimir Putin doesn't want just 20%. He didn't invade Ukraine to just get 20%. He invaded Ukraine to get all of it. All of it. And that's we've been talking about this before the election. All of it is what he wants. And so that's the problem. And then when you come out and say you can keep 20% of it, now Putin has already gotten exactly where he is now. Why shouldn't he continue? Why shouldn't he? He's already gotten all that. He's won. And the core problem, we'll talk about this when we get back, is that Putin believes he is winning the war. He believes he's winning. He's mortgaged his country's economic future on this war. And as long as Putin believes he's winning, you ain't finding a peace deal at all. That's got to change.
With regards to Hegseth, he said that Ukraine should give up winning all the territory back. So not all 20%,
but he said
winning all the territory.
No, winning all the territory back. Yeah, so you don't get the territory back. Good.
But my point being all 20%.
But that's what he said. You need to give up winning it back.
He said winning all of it back.
Yeah, back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's giving the land to Russia. He's giving the land to
There's
Russia.
a negotiation that's taking place there.
But there wasn't a negotiation at that time. Hegseth gave it up.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
He said all of it.
Yes,
so you got to be factually correct on this.
I am factually correct on this one.
No, he said all of it back, not all 20% of it. All right. Debates. Let's talk our friends at L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. We had our AC go out last summer. Not a lot of fun, to deal with the Colorado August with no air conditioning. And we went out, did our research, looked at a bunch of different HVAC companies. The folks we chose, L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, they came and absolutely delivered for our family. One-day installation, no stress, personal service from start to finish, and they even followed up to make sure everything was perfect. Now our home is comfortable no matter what the weather, and with L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, we even got more peace of mind. Here's what some of their deals are. Free programmable thermostat or carbon monoxide detector with new furnace or air conditioner installation, no emergency charges, a $0 trip fee, price match value guarantee on equipment, free estimates, licensed and insured, and a 5-year labor warranty. Everything works great in our house, and our family couldn't be happier. So if you're looking for fast, honest, reliable service, I highly recommend L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Here's their phone number, 720-851-1691, 720-851-1691, online at bestdenverhvac.com, bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called them. That number again, 720-851-1691. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. Donald Trump saying that Vladimir Putin playing with fire after Russia attack on Ukraine. Trump's getting tougher on Russia. Do you like to see it? Is there a peace deal to move forward? What do you do if you were Donald Trump in this situation? Would you assassinate Vladimir Putin? Try to change it? Would that unleash World War III? Do you allow Putin to keep 20% of the land to get peace here? To avoid World War III? If you're the chief negotiator, what would you do? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Trump getting tougher on Putin. So I'm fascinated to think what are going to happen to the political alignments here. So are those that have been critical of Trump saying, you're too soft on Putin, all of a sudden going to go, yay, go get him, DJT? Probably not. And those that are going, we don't want to be involved in foreign wars, are they going to go, Trump, figure out a way forward. Don't get too tough.
Everybody's saying this isn't the U.S. war for Ukraine. We shouldn't be there. We shouldn't support. People in his own party tried to defund and complain that Biden was sending too much money over there. How do they get behind Trump? And as I was just having a conversation with one of the texters, and I appreciate Stephen's message about steps that Trump and the U.S. could take in order to harm Russia militarily, as soon as you involve U.S. soldiers with military attacks in Ukraine or, God forbid, inside of Russia, are you starting World War III? That was the allegation against Joe Biden for years, that if you send even one U.S. soldier over there to fight, you're starting World War III. So if Trump is going to say that he is going to be the strong military man, the one thing theoretically he can't do is use the U.S. military. I think Trump has painted himself in a corner. I don't think he knows how to get out of this corner, and that's a problem. And I think Putin has played him, has done exactly what Putin said he was going to do. He's going to keep going forward, and Trump hasn't given him any reason to stop or slow down. In fact, after Donald Trump said, Vladimir, stop, he increased his attacks. He has attacked Ukraine harder with more force than he has in years. And that's after his buddy Trump told him to stop.
I see it differently. Trump, while other presidents out there may go war then peace, I think Trump leads with peace, but is willing to respond in strength in ways, especially Joe Biden and Barack Obama weren't willing to, which means Vladimir Putin is genuinely playing with fire right now.
What are those ways?
And you may get a response that comes from Donald Trump. It'll start with tougher sanctions than you've seen coming from Joe Biden and Barack Obama. But
I'm sure he's scared of that.
You know, I mean, it could.
But what? What's the strength?
Those economic ones. But you could be poking a bear you don't want to poke. I don't know what the military response would be. And that's where I'm intrigued to see how the political foundations could realign.
So you're saying
in
Trump
this
could
case,
get us into World War III?
But Trump could respond in strength in a way that Vladimir Putin could be.
What I'm hearing from you is the guy that it was supposed to be. Oh, during Trump there was no wars that were started. That Trump could be the one starting the war. That's a switch. That's a big switch.
We'll have to see, but Trump's not one to mess with. All right. We've got a lot coming up in the next hour. Colorado Public Radio suing Donald Trump. To my point on NPR funding, Trump got fired up on that in a way Reagan never did and cut the funding. Now Colorado Public Radio suing him. We'll talk about that. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is KNUS.
Well, it's 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations, you're waking up in the greatest country in history. Colorado's blue, America's red, and it all meets right here in the Jeff and Bill Show, where we debate the color of the sky sometimes. Well,
yes, we do.
In this case, Colorado Public Radio joining with NPR to sue the Trump White House. Of course, it's Colorado. NPR and 3 Colorado public radio stations have filed suit Tuesday morning in federal court against Trump's White House over the president's executive order that purportedly bars the use of congressionally appropriated funds for NPR and PBS. It's not always obvious when the government has acted with a retaliatory purpose in violation of the First Amendment, but this wolf comes as a wolf. The legal filing for the public broadcaster states the order.
That's a quote.
What's that?
That's a quote from Justice Alito.
Yeah.
That's a quote. Yeah, that's a quote from Alito. So the fact they inserted that into the briefing, that was a next level punch, because they're using a conservative justice's justifications to defend the First Amendment in this lawsuit.
Well, they use a phrase, but the idea that this is going to stand, no way. And I'll easily pick this apart, but I'm sure Bill will have a response to it. So we'll get into this debate this next hour. I mean, I don't think this stands a chance in court. But we'll have to see. Bill was listening to CPR yesterday when they gave their defense. So,
yeah, I got lucky. I was telling Jeff off the air just for a second here. Was listening to another show in the afternoon. Was jumping around and went to break. And when I turned over, CPR was doing an interview with the CEO, and that's just too serendipitous. So I had to sit there and listen to that while I was driving. Change the channel afterwards.
I'm interested to see their perspective, because it doesn't seem complicated to me. And it's just simple. You can make the argument that you've been stripped of your funds inappropriately if everybody else is getting funds, right? But Bill, I don't remember the last time you and I got a check from the government for our broadcast. So if it's not being spread out evenly to everybody, and then all of a sudden your little spigot gets cut off because of what you said, then you can't make the claim that it's a First Amendment case.
But it's a spigot authorized by Congress, and what that authorization entails. So this will be a fun discussion. This will be a very fun discussion.
Lots to talk about in this next hour. Feel free to join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Now it's time for your 8 o'clock dose of news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good Wednesday morning, 51 and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 67 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, Denver police were searching for 2 children, 10 and 8 years old, last seen just after noon on Tuesday, a boy and a girl in the Lowry neighborhood. And great news this morning, DPD has safely located them. It's that time of year, and another tornado touched down in northeastern Colorado last night, 23 miles north of Fort Morgan. One man in New Raymer said it went through his backyard and no injuries reported. Axios reporting the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem demand ICE supercharge criminal alien arrests to now 3,000 a day. David Sachs telling Jesse Waters on Fox last night that Pocahontas knows forgery.
This is the financial system of the future, Jesse, and we have to encourage it. What the Biden administration was doing, and let's face it, it wasn't Biden. Elizabeth Warren controlled the auto pen during that administration. She, for some reason, has this pathological hatred of the crypto community. She wants to drive this community offshore. She doesn't want it happening in the United States. That's the wrong policy for the United States. We want all the innovation happening here. This is a financial system of the future. It's cheaper. It's more efficient. We want it happening here, Jesse, and I think people are thrilled that President Trump is making that possible.
Interesting. A new Florida law would allow state residents to use gold and silver as legal currency. Governor DeSantis signed a bill into law that recognizes gold and silver as legal tender in Florida. DeSantis also talked to Elon and the big, beautiful bill.
A little frustrating. You know, Elon Musk went into this Doge effort. He was getting lampooned. I mean, like, they're firebombing his Tesla dealerships. Media smearing him relentlessly. His businesses suffered, all this stuff, because he basically said, look, we can't keep doing this, and we need to moderate and reduce the amount of money that the federal government is spending. And yet, we have a Republican Congress, and to this day, we're in the end of May, past Memorial Day, and not 1 cent in Doge cuts have been implemented by the Congress. That's one of the reasons why we need a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It's another reason why we need term limits for members of Congress.
Amen to that. The good news, Doge has removed 12.3 million Social Security accounts of individuals aged 120 years and older. The 47 administration has ordered U.S. embassies to stop scheduling appointments for new student visas. The decision comes as the administration is reportedly preparing to introduce social media vetting for foreign students. DJT is offering free Golden Dome protection to Canada if it joins the U.S. On Truth Social, 47 claimed Canada very much wants to be part of his proposed missile defense system, which would cost them $61 billion to join. He then offered that it would cost them $0 if they became our cherished 51st state. Pope Leo XIV is calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and peace in Ukraine. Speaking at today's general audience at the Vatican, he called for Hamas to free the remaining Israeli hostages. Thunder try to eliminate the T-Wolves tonight in Oklahoma City in the NBA playoffs. The Pacers beat the Knicks last night and lead the Eastern Conference Series 3-1. 49 in Arvada, 50 in Aurora, 51 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
Trump will be back in office and will continue to be that bull in the
China shop. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
With moist air residing along the Front Range, watch out for night and morning areas of patchy fog, otherwise partly cloudy skies with afternoon and evening. Scattered thunderstorms and showers today, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. Lesser thunderstorm coverage this weekend. Will be low to mid-70s today, only about 65 to 70 for Wednesday and Thursday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, of course, Colorado public radio stations joining with NPR to sue Trump White House. I think it's the only thing we do in the state anymore. We don't fix roads. We protest and we sue the president. We set up a $4 million fund to do so. Go, Phil Weiser, go. Sue the president on everything. All right. Here is from NPR. NPR and 3 Colorado public radio stations filed suit Tuesday morning in federal court against the Trump White House over the president's executive order that purportedly bars the use of congressionally appropriated funds for NPR and PBS. It's not always obvious when the government has acted with a retaliatory purpose in violation of the First Amendment, but this wolf comes as a wolf. The legal filing in the public broadcaster states the order targets NPR and PBS expressively because, in the president's view, their news and other content is not fair, accurate, or unbiased. The line about the wolf was drawn from a 1988 dissent, as you pointed out, Bill, from the late U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. The lawsuit says the administration is usurping Congress's power to direct how federal money will be spent and to pass laws. It names President Trump, Russel Vogt, Scott Bessent, and others, the chair of the National Endowment for the Arts, as defendants, a team that includes noted free speech lawyer Theodore Boutrous, filed the lawsuit for NPR and the Colorado stations jointly in the District of Columbia. The suit calls Trump's early May executive order textbook retaliation and an existential threat to the public radio system that millions of Americans across the country rely on for vital news and information. They say that the executive order is a clear violation of the Constitution and the First Amendment's protection for freedom of speech and association and freedom of the press, NPR president and CEO Catherine Maher said in a statement. So I think you can make the argument, and it's a fair argument, to go, well, Congress has to cut it off. It's not the president's job to cut it off entirely. And I think that could be debated and should be debated. But to say that we deserve this money because our free speech rights are being violated, I don't think that passed muster. Now, Bill, I would love to hear what CPR was making their arguments, and then I'll give you my response. But you listened to CPR yesterday.
Yeah.
What was their response?
A couple of things. One is, of course, the idea that Corporation for Public Broadcasting is created by an act of Congress, and that Congress makes the rules and decides how to spend the money, and the president enforces that. It's not the president's purview, nor does he have the ability, regardless of political party, to cancel a law that is done by Congress. That's not something you can do through an executive order. If the president wanted to, and again, this is the interesting thing, NPR never made the argument that the president with Congress can't take away funding. That's how this should be done and needs to be done if you want to accomplish the goal. Their argument is, one, this is not the way to do it because the executive order can't accomplish this. But more importantly, what was contained inside of the executive order. And I think the CEO of NPR did a very good job outlining that inside the executive order, President Donald Trump says that it is because of the coverage and perceived support of the Democrat Party is why they're pulling the funding.
Yeah.
That's a violation of the First Amendment. The government cannot come in.
Well,
yes, it is. Hang on. Let me finish. It is a violation of the First Amendment because the government cannot come in and tell an organization, even NPR, and again, this is through Corporation for Public Broadcasting, to change your editorial direction. That is not something the government gets to do. That is a direct violation of free speech and the First Amendment. The government does not have that control, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is set up explicitly to establish independence. The executive has no control over the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, nor can they exert it this way. It's a free speech issue because of how, and what I think they did well is outline because of how the executive order was written. The executive order outlines this is because of your political speech. Yes. So now we're going to take away your right. Yeah.
Okay, so there are plenty of examples of the state or the federal government requiring that if you receive a benefit from the government, you have to remain politically neutral. Perfect example of this, 501c3 status. So if you exist as an entity and you don't have to pay taxes. You are required by law to remain neutral. If you run your 501c3 as a political turnout mechanism, okay, if you go endorse candidates, if you host events that are one-sided, the government absolutely has the power to come in and say, you receive a government benefit. You cannot run this as a political entity. Ergo, you cannot, the power of the government can require you to be neutral. You are not being neutral. In this case, you have taxpayer dollars going to an entity that is not being neutral. We all know that Colorado Public Broadcasting and NPR are not neutral in their coverage. And we are spending tax dollars. They are getting a benefit from the government. The president has the right to enforce, if there are any requirements, that NPR or PBS or others be generally neutral. And I guarantee you, I'm guessing, unless I'm proven wrong, that there are requirements. Otherwise, we're just funding left-wing media outlets.
The issue is, though, that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting doesn't fall into those purviews. It's not the same as a normal 501c3. And that's where the funding comes from. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting was created through an act of Congress. That's different than applying under the statute of 501c3. And I know, but that's the problem you have C3s? Here. The problem is this. The funding comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and is allocated by Congress. And how it's outlined inside of that law that's been created by Congress, it's not treated the same way. It doesn't mean that the government has, especially the executive branch, can come in and say, I dislike your political reporting or your perceived politics, and then can pull your funding. That's not how this works. That's not how the act was set up.
They do that all the time.
Hang on.
NPR is a 501c3.
Hang on. The funding comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That's the evil person or entity here. And by attacking NPR, you're charging it windmills. That's the mistake being made here, is that Donald Trump had a focus on NPR and PBS, but unfortunately, the way to effectively do what he needs to get rid of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. He didn't do that, and he can't do that through executive order because how it was created. And inside of that act, it shows the idea that you can't have the executive or anybody in politics leaning on them and telling them how to cover stories or where to put their money. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting gives the money then to NPR, and NPR does with it as they say. And I understand that you disagree with it, but the bromide that Donald Trump floats is that it is a paid arm of the Democrat Party. That's not true. We haven't seen any proof of that. I understand that you say, yes, they cover liberal stories. That doesn't mean a paid arm of the Democrat Party. No more than when the liberals say that Fox News is a paid arm of the Republican Party. That's true. That's not true either.
They're not receiving tax dollars.
Hang on. That's not true either. I'm saying the functionality. The tax dollars are irrelevant in my example. The statement that the NPR and public radio are an active arm of the Democrat Party is incorrect, just like saying Fox News is an active arm of the Republican Party is incorrect. Do they sometimes align, and are they close at times? Yes. Do they sometimes push the same issues? Yes. But they are not functionally an arm. And that's where a lot of this assumptions are falling apart. And that's why Donald Trump has gotten into problems with this. And I do think that NPR has got a good shot at winning. I would say they've got probably a 75 to 80% shot at winning because inside of the executive order, Donald Trump complains about their political coverage. A lot of what NPR does isn't necessarily politics either. And that's where it is. That's where it's going to cross over this First Amendment issue, is the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is an entity that is set up outside of politics in the purview of the executive. The executive has no control over the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
It is purely political. NPR has 87 registered Democrats working in editorial positions and 0 Republicans.
So
it is a political operation for one single party in an effort to get one single party into power, and our tax dollars are paying for it. and it needs to be confronted.
What percentage of people working in Fox News in the editorial departments are Republicans versus Democrats?
Bill, it doesn't matter.
Wait, hang on a sec.
It's not receiving tax dollars.
Hang on a sec. This is incredibly important because your justification for saying they're a political arm is based on party membership. So if that's true, all I'm saying is I'm not concerned about the tax issue. I'm just saying that if you think that number of representation of one political party means that group, that media organization is in the tank for that party, that Democrat Party, would you say the same thing for Fox? Is Fox News in the tank for the Republican Party? Yes or no, based on...
Yeah, they're absolutely a tool in support of the conservative worldview in the Republican Party.
That's fine. Now, good. Now we can get to there. Now, the issue here, the problem is the tax funding doesn't directly go to NPR. That's why President Trump can't take it away. It's through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is established as an independent entity outside of the purview of the executive. The executive has zero control.
I don't care who it goes to. Does tax dollars end up at NPR?
Hang on. But how do the tax dollars get there? That's important because once those tax dollars go to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the executive has no control over that, nor does Congress. That's why this is a problem.
Why don't you? That's not a problem.
That's why it's a problem. No. I'm saying this lawsuit's a problem because the functionality you don't understand. This isn't money that is flowing directly from taxpayers into NPR. It goes to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Stop it there. But isn't that where you shut it off?
No, but you can't do it through an executive order. You have to do it through an act of Congress. Ta-da! What I was talking about at the beginning.
And like I said at the beginning, if you want to make the argument that this needs to be done entirely through Congress, that's one thing. But to claim that this is a free speech issue is another thing entirely. And that's where NPR is wrong. No tax dollars, period, should be going to NPR anymore. This is not the 1960s. We don't have big broadcast radio stations across the country that need to be funded by our government so that news can get out there. Everything's done through your phone these days. These are the only entities funded by the federal government. They're left-wing, progressive, agenda-driven operations to get Democrats elected and drive conservative policy or progressive policy ideas. That's why they exist. There shouldn't be a tax dollar. I don't care if it goes through Corporation of Public Broadcasting, anything. Donald Trump was right to seek to shut this off because it's not neutral. They're getting tax dollars to get Democrats elected. All right, we'll get to the phone lines here in just a second. Let's talk what Democrats are doing here in the state of Colorado, ruining it with crime issues. If you own a business, you know how hard it is to keep your business safe. Well, we've got the solution for you. Alarm detection systems, highest level of service and expertise to keep your business safe. Think about all the time you could be saving using one source for cameras, keycard access, and fire intrusion systems. ADS offers expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians, 24/7 professional monitoring, same-day or next-day service upon request because downtime isn't an option, and dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms. Over 300 security professionals working for you. Choosing ADS means your businesses stay protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. They combine human monitoring with the latest AI camera technology to prevent crime in real time. Trusted by small and large businesses, including many Colorado schools. Their security experts will review your system for free. Go to adsalarm.com to schedule your appointment today. adsalarm.com. Alarm detection systems, the first choice of Front Range and Colorado businesses. adsalarm.com. We got absolutely full phone lines. Absolutely.
Yes, we do.
That's great. I love it. All right, let's go. You want to do Melissa, and then we'll get to
let's do that. Yeah.
Melissa. Denver, good morning. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Good morning. I hope I can explain this the way I mean it, but if you get a tax-free donation, right? For if you donate, so the people who donate through NPR, if they are a Democrat or Republican, they kind of can. If they get an advertisement through it or something like that, just for donating because they want the money, then aren't they being able to, they're getting tax-free advertising through NPR, so it's kind of like they're funneling advertising through NPR.
Well, Melissa, the part of it though is that if you listen to NPR doesn't do advertising in the traditional sense. And what that means is they don't have spot blocks where they stop down like we do, where you run a bunch of ads about problem solution. What they do is, and I've got a couple of people that I know that work as sales over there, and they said, best sales job in the world, because all you're trying to do is have these people write you a check to say, we proudly support the mission of this station. That's basically it. And those are read at the top or the bottom of the hour normally in spaces. So they don't break their clock up in the traditional way. They don't deliver traditional advertising messages, and they almost never involve things like, hey, McDonald's supports the great mission of National Public Radio, and come get the 5 for $5 Big Mac deal at blah, blah, blah. Or come and get the new Angel Reese, Big Mac special. They don't do that. So they don't actively sell goods or services on the air. They provide support is the idea.
But wouldn't they be currying favor and therefore maybe getting free airtime kind of on the down low because of their donation, quote unquote?
Well, the thing would be is that would be fairly easy to follow because you could track the donations based on tax receipts, and then you could go ahead and look at if this person donates X, do they get coverage as to why, as what this is. In fact, let me give you a direct example that operates here in Colorado. You every once in a while will run across news stories, and this will be something that'll pop up on the liberal side of things, okay? Listen very carefully. I want everybody in the Jeff and Bill audience to listen for this specific news broadcasting name. Not a name of a person, but a name of an organization. If anybody ever cites the Colorado Newsroom, that is a paid service. That's a service that was started by liberals that go and get funding from members, and those are exactly what you're talking about. Those are people that buy in, and then the Colorado Newsroom provides favorable coverage about their issues or about their company. It is directly. It's not always pay for play, but Melissa, Colorado Newsroom does exactly that. I haven't seen anything showing that NPR does that skews their news based on who their funders are. But do keep your ears open. If you ever hear anything about this news story was provided by, or these are from our partners from Colorado Newsroom, that's paid 110%.
Okay. All right.
And it's also important to point out, everybody, that we're dealing with 1% of NPR's annual budget.
Yeah. Hey, Melissa, thanks for the phone call.
1%. And a good text message here, is NPR going to use our tax dollars to sue? Well, probably not if it's 1%. But this is 1%. This is purely a battle over policy beliefs and the idea that the government should be funding broadcast in any capacity. 1%. NPR could go on perfectly fine without this, but they are going to make this a big battle because they believe that the government should be funding their organization.
And
all right.
I think they more believe that if this was such a big deal, then Republicans need to put on their mandate pants and change the law. That's the way you fix it. Put on your mandate pants and get it done. 7 Democrats in the Senate, Bill. 7 Democrats in the Senate. Put on your mandate pants and get it done.
It's not going to happen with 7 Democrats in the Senate.
Then do you have a mandate? I heard about that a lot after Donald Trump. Mandate, mandate, mandate. Get your big boy mandate pants on and get it through if you think it's a great idea. If
Democrats
not,
won't allow
stop
it.
whining about it.
There's never a dollar going to a government that the Democrats will ever cut. All right, let's talk Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. Pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. He's right there with us on the values. He has spent the last 40 years of his life helping people in Colorado hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes get justice. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. In fact, Dan Caplis Law is so trusted, he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplislaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. Text messages are hot, so are the phone lines. Give us a call. We got one open line. Get in the queue, 303-696-1971. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Well, NPR, along with 3 other stations here in Colorado, public radio station, suing the Trump White House, claiming their First Amendment rights are being infringed, that this is an obvious act of retaliation in violation of the First Amendment. My argument is that this is a progressive left-wing operation to get Democrats elected and advance progressive policy. There shouldn't be a dime of taxpayer dollar going to any of this, and Donald Trump's exactly right to cut it off. But does he have the power? Should this come from Congress?
Yeah, not according to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was established. The executive branch cannot exert political or editorial control over what the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is funding or doing. And that's the argument that NPR is making, is that because Donald Trump's executive order says that NPR and everybody else are a bunch of libtards that are pushing the Democrat agenda, that's a violation of the First Amendment because the executive is trying to exert editorial control on a media outlet, and it's funded not directly by the taxpayers, but through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was set up as an entity outside of the control of Congress or the executive in these decisions. If they want to change it, change the law.
If it's a political operation to get a particular party elected, why should it be receiving $1 of taxpayer money?
But isn't that a conclusion you have to prove? Because you load a whole bunch of stuff. You can say that it's a liberal, but you said it's a liberal outlet.
The coverage of the stories, the political makeup of the editorial board, all that stuff.
That could just make them a liberal outlet. It doesn't mean they are trying to work with the Democrat Party to get them elected, which is the conclusion you've made. Also the conclusion that Donald Trump makes an executive order. And here's the problem. Regardless of that, it doesn't matter because of how the act was set up with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Absolutely matter. All right, we got to
put on your mandate
Bill
pants
and
and change it.
Go around in a circle on this one. All right,
we will.
Francis Golden. Good morning, Francis. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Morning, you guys. Hey, I definitely think that this is a weakness in the legislature, and you can't executive order this for that very reason. It's established through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and if the legislators would just find some cojones here and actually try to deconstruct the Corporation for Public Broadcasting using arguments that Jeff has made, which are correct. I think historically, the whole idea behind needing some sort of public radio outlet is that you need to have somewhere to go for news that may not be otherwise able to be disseminated for whatever reason. And so these reasons are really beyond, it's by the boards now. But, why can't, it used to be these legislators, I think, are just such hosers now. All they want to do is get in front of a camera and on both sides of the aisle. And if they would just, I don't see anything wrong at all, Jeff, with them running some sort of piece of deconstruction legislation that may not get through the Senate, because guess what? Isn't that what they used to do, is kind of put that issue out into the public sphere and get the conversation started, make other politicians take a position against it, and then maybe soften up those seats and maybe win them the next time?
Hey, Francis, you brought something up there. How many times did the Republicans vote to defund and take apart the Affordable Care Act? Over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Constantly.
Yeah, they always did that.
Knowing it was never
going
work.
anywhere. Yeah, but now all of a sudden, no, we can't possibly do anything.
I mean, they could easily run this, and they likely will run a bill to try to defund NPR. But you're going to have 7 Democrats. You're going to have 7 Democrats that will never do it out of the Senate. So, they're not going to cut something where millions of dollars are going from taxpayer wallets to the benefit of their policy agenda, which is what NPR does. So they're not going to cut it. So Donald Trump comes in and cuts it, forces a legal issue over it, tries to get some funding out of it. Good job. I'm glad he did it.
To do it. But here's the other thing is that, okay, I think, look at this for what it is. I don't think any advisor of Trump, would have said, yeah, sure, this is fine. You're perfectly in your lane. Go ahead and just executive order them out of existence. It'll hold up. Instead, what he did is he went ahead and did that so he could take a position about it. And in the wording, he absolutely points out it's just retaliation based on political affiliation. And I'm not arguing with you, Jeff, about, of course it's primarily made up of Democrats, but Trump did this it's raw meat to the masses. That's all it is, because it isn't going to work. And
it definitely forced the conversation.
It
definitely forced the conversation. When we're $37 trillion in debt, we need to cut somewhere. Sure. I mean, look, YouTube's not publicly funded. TikTok's not publicly funded. Everything that we use to consume media these days is not publicly funded, yet somehow Colorado Public Radio needs to continue to get money from taxpayers. So you bring up a really good point, Francis. I appreciate the call. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
Francis's line will be open 303-696-1971. All right, we know Memorial Day is done, but till June 4th, you have the opportunity to go to Mountain High Appliance and bring home the kitchen you've been dreaming about. All right, let's talk what deals Mountain High Appliance has. Save up to $4,300 on select KitchenAid appliance packages this weekend. They're proud to offer KitchenAid, an iconic brand trusted for over 100 years. Don't wait. These deals won't last. $4,300 off select KitchenAid appliance packages. When you think appliances, think locally owned. A Mountain High Appliance. Let's go to Ryan Aurora. Good morning, Ryan. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Well, let's see. They're .org, right? Organization, incorporated.
Yeah.
They've got bylaws, just like every other single 501c on the planet. They have to abide by these laws. If they vary outside of them, they're in trouble. They lose their standing. Now, that's one approach you could take. That's the correct way, I would say. But Trump's bringing up the point that this is all part of the cabal that railroaded him in 2020. They're 100% politically minded, and they behave that way. Somebody's got to do something about it. He's a donor, in a sense, the Treasury. He decided not to donate this year.
Actually, he's not.
Sorry.
He's not a donor.
Their donor.
Wait, Ryan, he's not a donor. The federal government is not a donor to NPR. The federal government funds the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is an external...
And they're liable to fund it every single year?
But yes, and it's because it's set up by law. Yes, and so that's why you can't change this based on an executive order. This has to be changed through Congress, and that's what Donald Trump gets wrong. He or the federal government or the taxpayers are not directly funding NPR. It goes to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is a corporation set up outside the purview of Congress and outside the purview of the executive.
It's still a nonprofit corporation.
It is set up, though,
These
to be
are all
independent.
NGOs that we have here.
But it is set up to be independent, and it is not under the control of the executive branch. If it's not under the control of the executive branch, he can't executive order it out of existence. He can't executive order their money to go away. That's the problem. This has to be accomplished in Congress, regardless of our fifis and what we think about NPR or Fox News or anything else politically. This can't be accomplished this way. It has to be done through Congress. Donald Trump and the executive department does not fund NPR. It's the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and they're set up to be independent. And the executive and Congress has no purview over their editorial control or where they put their money. So you want to change it? You change the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That's where it has to be done, and it has to be done through Congress. It can't be done with Donald Trump putting his signature on a piece of paper.
All right, Bill, here's the three powers, right? Three. Just three.
Yep. Yeah.
Executive, judicial, and Congress, right?
Yes.
The baboons.
Yep.
All right, the baboons write this budget. Who writes the checks?
The taxpayers.
The treasurer.
The taxpayers.
The treasurer writes the checks, which is under the executive. Now, if Dad decides not to pay the kid money
Ryan,
because they're spoiling it,
but that doesn't matter.
And ruining their budget.
Hang on. The executive does not have control over the funding. The executive has to write the checks. No. The executive department does not have control. The treasurer is not a king to decide who and what gets the checks.
No, they're not.
I know they're not. And so what Congress authorizes, the Treasury has to fund.
Who
That's how it
oversees
works.
the Corporation for Public Broadcasting?
I don't know.
That's
Didn't look.
a better question.
I didn't look. I didn't think it was. I
Gates,
didn't look at it. But again,
they're huge as foundations.
But again,
You
I don't
haven't
think
even
they
looked at
oversee
their
it.
bylaws,
But
and you're
Ryan,
going
I
to
don't
argue
think
about what you think you know about them.
No. It's not about what I think I know. I'm talking about how it was set up. I'm not talking about the
These
structure of
are
the organization.
bylaws. Yes,
I'm not
the structure
talking
of the organization. Right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the act
Verbatim
that set it up.
in Congress, the law.
I'm talking
All right,
about
so this
how
is
it was set
cited
up.
from
Ryan, I'm
Congress,
talking about
Library
how it was
of
set up.
Congress. Okay. What's the citation in the Library of Congress so I can look it up myself and be a little more educated about this conversation? We can have it tomorrow about it.
I don't know. Go hit the Google box.
Let me know.
Go hit the Google box, man. That's pretty easy.
Because you don't know. You don't have it in front of you?
Ryan.
Then you're not very well prepared for this argument, sir. I'm going to let you go.
Do you feel better now, Ryan?
All right.
You feel better about yourself, Ryan?
The
with that?
Corporation of Public Broadcasting is overseen by a
They know the bylaws of
nine-member
Corporation of Public
board
Broadcasting.
of directors. These board members
How it
are
was set up.
appointed by the President of the United States, confirmed by the U.S. Senate, serving 6-year terms. The board sets policy, establishes funding priorities, and appoints CBP's President and Chief Executive Officer. But with regards to the point as to who writes the check, it seems like the executive branch has some type of say on that, don't
No, not based on how it was set up, because the corporation.
Really? I mean, well, then who
look at
takes the
act.
money from the Treasury?
But hang on a sec. Congress directs the money from the Treasury to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That's how the act is set up. The Treasurer and the Treasury Department has no control over where and what they fund, because what would happen is you could end up with someone that's more liberal or more conservative than what the president or the Congress is and decide not to write the checks. That is not how the government's set up. That's not how the government's
exactly what's
set up.
happening right now. That's what happens with Jared Polis, for instance, saying, I'm not going to send money to these counties if you don't abide by my...
That's state. That's not what we're talking about, federal funding. And we're
Right,
talking specifically
but the
here.
executive has some say in this, whether it's
No.
state or federal.
No,
Yes, there's a lot of say over where
No.
this money gets spent.
No, the
It comes from
executive,
the
executive. No, the Congress directs how the money is to be spent, and the president, the executive, spends the money as directed. Congress controls the purse strings and sets up how the money is supposed to be spent, where it's supposed to be spent, and in the amounts. The executive does not have control over that. That's why we have 3 different branches of government. Congress sets up the laws, the executive enforces the laws, and the judiciary resolves differences. That's the easiest thumbnail sketch of how our government is set up. That's it. The executive doesn't get to make the funding decisions. That's why Biden was wrong about the student debt forgiveness, and that's why Trump is wrong about the NPR funding.
I'm not sure that the CBP board is entirely independent of the executive. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think it is entirely, because you have executive orders where the CBP is being the CBP board. Oh my gosh, the CBP board is directed by the White House in some capacities.
They're appointed.
So I'm not sure it's entirely independent.
No, they're
All right.
appointed, but the act defines them as independent. The actual law that creates them defines them as independent. That's
All right.
the issue.
Let's talk advanced hair restoration. Guys, if you're losing your hair and desire to have it back, then Advanced Hair Restoration has the easiest guaranteed solution. Their simple one-day treatment offers life-changing results. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's not magic, but close to it. They put hair where you need it the most, and bam, it grows. It's actually science. Advanced Hair has it all. Top-rated Dr. Tanya Paul's modern technology, and best of all, you get your own natural hair that begins regrowing the very next day. Advanced Hair even guarantees it will grow for life. So schedule your free consultation now, 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver now 2 years in a row and has changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. So don't wait. Check out their before and afters online for yourself. Visit 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. Advancedhair.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Hey, Ryan, 47 U.S. Code 386. Check it out. Can you do the research too?
All right, welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're debating NPR suing the president. Now, the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which distributes these funds, yes, is an independent agency, okay? Is not overseen by the executive. But what the president is arguing in his executive order is that he has a duty and responsibility when it comes to the distribution of grants. And he lists a bunch of grants here. That when these grants are being given in a way that violates other law, so for instance, if there's a law out there that says no person shall be subject to discrimination in employment or on the grounds of race, color, religion, national origin, or sex, so general discrimination law, if those grants are being given to NPR and NPR is violating those other laws in some way, he has a role and responsibility to step in and stop the distribution of those said grants. And that's essentially the basis for.
But what was the law violation that he had in the executive order?
So he lists a lot of them. So he lists that a whole series of grants, but then calls on the HHS to look into whether or not those grants are being distributed in violation of discrimination, of the use of funding to advance political causes, those types of things.
Ding, ding, ding. There's your First Amendment violation right there. Because it's the function of pushing together a political point of view. KNUS.
All right, it is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Bill and I continue to debate, even off hour, this CPR, NPR lawsuit. But I think it's important to show this, that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is required by law to remain impartial. They cannot contribute to or otherwise support any political party.
Yeah, that's why they haven't donated to the Democrats or the Republicans.
And otherwise support could absolutely include the funding of media to advance one particular political party or their policies over another. But I guess my question is,
you'd have to show. Hang on. You'd have to show that NPR is making editorial decisions to promote the Democrat Party rather than them just making.
And I think they've done that.
But hey, no, I don't think they. I don't think they've demonstrated that at all. Rather than just making editorial decisions that are liberal. That's different than editorial decisions that are specific to helping and supporting the Democrat Party. That's different. Two things can be true at the same time, and two things can be different at the same time. But just because someone is a liberal doesn't mean they're necessarily a full-throated supporter of the Democrat Party. We've had callers and texters here on the show that disagree with the Democrat Party but identify themselves as liberal. There are people here that identify themselves as conservatives but don't identify with the Republican Party. Same thing.
This is what Republicans have been pointing out, that the news coverage, that the makeup of the editorial board, that the stories out there over and over and over again benefit the Democrat Party and their policy agenda over the Republican Party. This is taxpayer dollars. We're $37 trillion in debt. The CBP is required by law to remain independent. They're not being independent. Now, can the president pull these fundings? Does he have the ability to do that? The argument he's making is that he's enforcing other grant requirements by asking the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to no longer fund NPR according to the criteria laid out in other grants. But I mean,
based on his editorial and political position, and that ends up being a violation of the First Amendment because he can't control or tell the Corporation for Public Broadcasting what their political bent or where the money needs to be spent. He doesn't have that control. It's outside of the executive.
If NPR was conservative and pushing Donald Trump's agenda, do you think that they should be receiving taxpayer dollars?
Here's the idea. If NPR was coordinating and working to get Republicans elected, no. If NPR was pushing a conservative worldview, yes, they can get funding, in my opinion, through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
That's required by law to remain neutral.
Yes.
I don't think that they should be receiving funding at all, even if it was conservative. We're $37 trillion in debt. Fox doesn't need state funding. It's doing just fine.
They take tax breaks.
They
take tax breaks all the time. They don't try to sit here and pay the full. They take that, which is again taking money outside of the Treasury. If we're talking about where money is going, etc. Again,
but they're not. Fox isn't a nonprofit; it's a corporation.
So I understand, but the idea is that we're not going to avail ourselves of things that are available to them. And again, it's fine. I understand
you think that a tax break is the same as direct funding from the government?
No, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that both sides take advantage of where the funding exists and what the rules allow them to do. However, it doesn't necessarily say that NPR is an arm of the Democrat Party. That's where you start from, and that has to be proven.
I think it's been proven.
Well, I know that you think that, but that's the issue.
And I think it's going to be proven in court.
Sure. Good luck with that. Good luck. But yeah,
87 members of your editorial board are registered Democrats and not a single one is a Republican.
Okay. And
you don't think that skews the news in any direction?
Here's the idea: is what you have to do then is you have to assume that anybody that is of one political party cannot be objective.
Well, I think we've learned that in the media.
No, but that's your assumption.
Who out there is objective right now in media? I'm not. You're not. So who's objective in the media? What news entity in Colorado is objective? The Denver Post?
The issue,
Channel 9?
The issue being that you're assuming that an individual cannot be objective based on if they join a political party or not.
No, I haven't heard. Who's objective? Which media outlet out there is objective right now?
It depends on what the coverage is and where. I mean, I think that at times the Gazette's fairly objective. The Colorado Sun is fairly objective. I don't put the Denver Post into that. There are times I see things that are objective on both Channel 7 and Channel 4. Democrats. But they're political, and that's what you're trying to do. And that's why I've been arguing about journalism for years, is that as a journalist, you are supposed to remove that political bias. But what we're seeing, I disagree, and in some cases. But the idea is, because we see a political affiliation, we now assume they're going to do X, Y, or Z. This is the same BS that we see now about, oh, this is a Trump-appointed judge, so obviously they're going to do this. This is an Obama-appointed judge, so obviously they're going to do this. The same thing. We are making excuses, and we are rationalizing our politics. We are allowing our politics to determine our truth. Because we say that these people that happen to be Democrats are on the editorial board, we then assume they can't possibly be objective. That's it. We are allowing our politics to determine our truth, and that's wrong.
Overwhelming evidence that NPR and PBS is driven to get Democrats elected, to advance a progressive worldview, and it's so obvious that they're going to win in court. But we'll continue this conversation. We got to get to the news here. Now is time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, 55 and mostly cloudy in Denver. Expecting a high of 69 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, Secret Service suspends a couple of shenanigans caught in a gutter cat fight outside former President Obama's house. DJT moved all the DEI Secret Service agents to the protectees of those who pushed the garbage, so they get what they vote for. Secret Service agents going at it. The two women were armed. I have no idea who won the fight in Obama's house or just outside of Obama's house. Nice. Susan Crabtree reporting on this, and the ladies who started all this mess. Remember Kim Cheadle? Remember her? Disgraced former Secret Service director?
With this 30 by 30 pledge, 30% women in the agency by 2030. And I am told that she was very successful in this, and she had reached 24% at the time she was done. And so merit was no longer what they were valuing when in the hiring process.
Yep, that's right. And Jill Biden pushed it as well. And she was, Susan Crabtree was on Benny Johnson just minutes ago. Axios reporting the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem demand ICE supercharge criminal alien arrests now to 3,000 a day. The Trump administration is taking more action on universities. The U.S. embassies and consular sections are being ordered to put a hold on scheduling new interviews as the administration considers requiring foreign students to undergo social media screening. Denver police were searching for two children, 10 and 8 years old, last seen just after noon on Tuesday, a boy and a girl in the Lowry neighborhood. And great news this morning, DPD has safely located them. It's that time of year, tornadoes, and another one touched down in Colorado last night in northeastern Colorado, 23 miles north of Fort Morgan. One man in New Raymer said it went through his backyard and no injuries, thankfully, reported. Reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley are set to be pardoned by DJT. In 2022, they were found guilty of defrauding Georgia banks out of millions of dollars. That's what the banks said, and the state. On Tuesday, the president called their children to announce he'd pardoned the couple, with officials saying the pardon could come within 24 hours. Arkansas officials are still on the hunt for an escaped killer known as the Devil in the Ozarks. Grant Hardin, the former police chief of Gateway, Arkansas, was convicted of murder and rape in 2017 and sentenced to decades behind bars. The 56-year-old escaped from prison on Sunday by disguising himself as a law enforcement officer. Elon interviewed by CBS. He's critical of the big, beautiful bill.
So, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
Okay, that'll air on Sunday. NBA Thunder try to eliminate the T-Wolves tonight in Oklahoma City. The Pacers beat the Knicks again last night and lead the Eastern Conference 3 games to 1. And I just saw this 1970s teenage heartthrob. Oh my goodness, Sean Cassidy preparing for the longest tour he's ever had in his life. Wow, Sean Cassidy back on tour. Man, that could have. Remember that, Billy?
Dude.
Cassidy announced
Okay, I'll listen to this. Okay, I thought you were going to
September
run the
13th,
report.
the Road to Us tour kicks off at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, while Cassidy was co-starring on the teen-oriented TV series The Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries. His cover of "Do-Do Ron Ron" topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 1 week in July 1977. He also hit the top 10 that year with "That's Rock and Roll" and "Hey Deanie." Cassidy told Billboard he never really toured because of the TV show. The tour hits 19 states. That includes stops in Milwaukee, Detroit, and Orlando before wrapping up with 3 California shows January 16th through 18th. I'm Michael Kastner.
All the girls growing up.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be
loved
sponsored
him.
by Geritol.
Exactly.
Yes.
I didn't even know he was still alive.
I had no idea either, but yeah, that
Right?
song. Yeah, I know that song
Yeah.
very, very well. Yeah, I've got that in my music library. Absolutely.
All the girls in my neighborhood had Sean Cassidy posters up.
Oh,
I don't
hell
know
yeah.
about you. Yeah.
Oh,
that was,
the thing
it
for
was
me
like
is-
Farrah Fawcett for us
it
and,
totally
and Sean
was.
Cassidy
Yeah.
for them.
And how many guys went to their hairstylist going, "Can you teach me how to feather my hair?"
Feather.
Yes.
Oh, man. You
Bringing it
hit
back, my man.
That's right. That is beautiful.
Yeah, and those big giant goody combs. Yeah. We could go on this one, man.
Oh, man. 52 in Parker. It's getting hairy. 53 in Brighton, 55 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
With moist air residing along the Front Range, watch out for night and morning areas of patchy fog, otherwise partly cloudy skies with afternoon and evening. Scattered thunderstorms and showers today, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. Lesser thunderstorm coverage this weekend. Will be low to mid-70s today, only about 65 to 70 for Wednesday and Thursday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, it's been spicy today. Coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to talk with a pastor from Seattle after this crazy event. Is called a pro-life group hosts an event called Mayday USA as part of Don't Mess with Our Kids national tour. It drew hundreds of supporters, but even counter-protesters. This was all over the weekend, May 24th, in Cal Anderson Park in Seattle. A short time later, pro-LGBTQ counter-protesters confronted the group, waving transgender flags, reportedly clashing with police in riot gear. They threw water bottles and other objects. Seattle Police Department officers were trying to keep the two different protest groups separate and saw multiple people inside one group throw items at the opposing group, at the Christians that were there hosting their event. When officers moved to arrest the people responsible, they were assaulted by the protesters, by the Antifa leftist protesters. Situation escalated over the course of several hours, resulting in 22 adult arrests for assault and obstruction and 1 juvenile detained. 1 officer was treated and released from the hospital for an injury sustained during the protests. Video footage from the rally shared on social media showed 2 protesters, Antifa LGBTQ protesters, jumping a police barrier trying to gain access to the stage before being removed by security. According to an event listing, organizers for the counter-protest, which they labeled "Keep Your Bibles Off Our Bodies," included Freedom Socialist Party, Puget Sound Mobilization for Reproductive Justice, and Radical Women. Following the rally, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell, a Democrat, released a statement in apparent support for the LGBTQ counter-protesters and called the Christians worshiping a far-right rally that sought to, quote, provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are inherently opposed to our city's values in the heart of Seattle's most prominent LGBTQ neighborhood. Don't you know this is our land? How dare you come in here with your Christian values? He writes, I'm grateful for those who made their voices heard in support of our neighbors without resorting to violence, the mayor of Seattle said, in the face of extreme right-wing national efforts to attack our LGBTQ communities. Attack? Who's only one side was attacking here, Mr. Mayor. Seattle will continue to stand unwavering in our embrace of diversity. Love for our neighbors and commitment to justice and fairness. You are not committed to diversity. Oh my goodness. Your diversity only in the thought that you embrace, Mr. Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell. After blaming the violence on, quote, anarchists, who he said, quote, infiltrated the counter-protesters group, unquote, the mayor also announced that he ordered park officials to conduct a review to determine whether there were legal location alternatives or other adjustments which could have been pursued. The Pursuit NW, a multi-campus evangelical church in the Seattle area, slammed Harrell's remarks as religious bigotry on social media and called for Harrell to either apologize or resign. We're going to be joined here in just a few minutes by Russel Johnson, who's the lead pastor of Pursuit Northwest. He wrote on Sunday on X, Harrell owes Christians in Washington an apology or his bigoted remarks after folks who were holding a peaceful worship event in Cal Anderson Park were violently assaulted for the high crime of expressing their deeply held religious beliefs in the form of a permitted worship event on city property. He criticized Seattle's inept political leadership and the mayor for being an embarrassment to the Emerald City. After citing Harrell's 1996 arrest on weapons and assault charges for brandishing a firearm on a pregnant woman over a parking spot, that's the current mayor of Seattle, by the way, Johnson slammed his leadership record. The mayor is on his 3rd police chief since taking office. No one wants to work with him. His own family can't stand him, and Antifa gets a free pass from him. I guess pulling guns on pregnant women isn't enough for Mayor Harrell. Johnson continued, he's now got to blame Christians for a city he has let go to hell. City officials have taken political positions against Christians in recent years, most notably with missionary and political activist Sean Foyt. In September 2020, when the city shut down a local park to prevent him from hosting a prayer rally, on Labor Day while allowing protesters to engage in violent protests. Despite efforts by Seattle Parks and Recreation to halt the event at Gasworks Park, more than 2,000 Christians ultimately gathered in the streets of Seattle in a worship protest during the height of the coronavirus shutdown. So why relevant to bring this all up? Well, a few things. One, Sean Foyt is going to be in Denver June 8th for a rally. So I'm interested to see if that will continue and whether or not we'll end up with violent Antifa. Now, I've been down to a number of these protests down outside the state capitol, and Antifa are always present. The communists are always present, but to their credit, they're generally peaceful towards me. I haven't been assaulted or anything like that. They know who I am, and I know they listen to the show. So for being generally nonviolent, I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. Now, they do use lots of words to share their disdain about me, and those curse words will fly at me in abundance at these rallies. But it hasn't gotten to the level of Seattle. But I want to bring this up because of the mayor's reaction to the Christians that were hosting this event, okay? Whether or not you agree with the Christians or disagree with the Christians, right? They're hosting a worship event. They're not beating anybody up. They're not calling for any violence, okay? They're hosting a worship event. And the mayor blames the Christians, in this case, under the guise of wanting to be committed to diversity and inclusion, saying that the Christians essentially brought this upon themselves, that it was their values, their beliefs, their words that incited people towards violence. And it's essentially blaming the victim. It's victim shaming. It's the heckler's veto. And Dan Bongino with the FBI is now looking into whether or not the mayor is being particularly hostile towards Christians. So this is going to be a really fascinating conversation. And I also bring this up in light of the way Colorado shifted, right? We are a state with a gay mayor, or a gay governor. You have LGBTQ control almost entirely of the state capitol. So whatever their agenda is, whether it's bans on conversion therapy, whether it's the trans bill, HB 1312, whatever it might be, it goes through. There's not really any opposition right now. And in light of this state and its LGBTQ leadership, you have real threats to religious freedom. We've now had 3 cases from Colorado on this conflict between LGBTQ and Christianity go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Jack Phillips, a decade of having to deal with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission and their bullying and harassment of him. You have Lori Smith, who had to duck down on the floor of her house because she was concerned about drive-bys that might be taking place, intimidation against her. She wins at the U.S. Supreme Court. Jack wins at the U.S. Supreme Court. And then you have now this new case on conversion therapy ban and whether or not that's compelled speech going up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So you have those 3 cases. Then you have Catholic preschools, Protestant preschools suing the state as to whether or not their values are in conflict with Jared Polis's universal preschool. Okay. Now you have Camp Idra Haji that just wants to say, hey, at our camp, boys go into boys' bathrooms, girls go into girls' bathrooms. The state unwilling to give them a waiver, they now have to sue over it. Okay. So these states that have become LGBTQ friendly have become wildly hostile to Christians to the point where you have multiple lawsuits regularly making their way through the court, even 3 of them going all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So Pastor Russel Johnson, who was a pastor at this event, is going to join us to give us insight into the Seattle mayor. They hosted an event last night protesting the mayor. I'm eager to hear what they experienced there. I've seen videos of Antifa even threatening a mom holding a toddler attending this protest event. So I see Seattle as another level of vitriol and hatred towards Christians that we fortunately don't have here in Denver, but we have a lot of lawsuits that demonstrate that the state here is not friendly towards the Christian worldview when it comes to human sexuality. And I'm eager to hear what pastors in Seattle are having to deal with. So we'll get to them in a second. Now, let's talk alarm detection systems. You know, the challenges of owning and running a business in Colorado, not easy with all the crime, with the weak DAs, with the judges that let the criminals out. You got to have a security system that can protect your business. Alarm detection systems, highest level of service and expertise, and they combine it all. Think about all the time you could save using one source for cameras, keycard access, fire and intrusion systems. ADS offers expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians, 24/7 professional monitoring, same-day or next-day service upon request because downtime isn't an option, dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms, and over 300 security professionals all working for you. Choosing ADS means your business stays protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. They combine human monitoring with the latest AI camera technology to prevent crime in real time. Trusted by small and large businesses, including many Colorado schools, their security experts will review your system for free. All you got to do, visit adsalarm.com to schedule your appointment today. adsalarm.com, alarm detection systems, the first choice of Front Range and Colorado businesses, adsalarm.com. Pastor Russell Johnson joining us next from Seattle. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk station, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're going to try to get Pastor Russell Johnson on here in a second via Zoom, working with his assistant as well. They've had a busy day. They held a counter protest against the mayor in Seattle. Bottom line, what happened was they hosted an event titled Don't Mess With Our Kids. It's organized by a May Day organization. It's against the transgender agenda facing kids. Okay? It's a worship service. Very similar to what you might see at the March for Life or that type. Full of Christians, generally very peaceful. I've never run into a March for Life in all the years I've done it where you had any type of violence or even foul language. Now, when I go down to the anti-Trump protests, yeah, there's no violence, but it's full of foul language. So, different audiences. Well, there's a counter protest against these Christians, and it got violent. 22 people arrested by the Seattle police, and then the mayor coming out and saying, well, it's you Christians who caused this problem with your bigoted beliefs and all that. And the reason I raise this, and the question I'll have to you, Bill, and to others is, are these states that are becoming LGBTQ friendly becoming hostile to Christianity? I look at multiple U.S. Supreme Court cases that Christians have on this issue. This isn't just a side issue, but the conflict between Christianity and LGBTQ has resulted in 3 U.S. Supreme Court cases, multiple other lower cases, now Idra Haji, that these have become hostile states towards Christians. That's the question I have, but I'll get to that in a second. Let's talk L&L heating and air conditioning. We're bouncing all around in the temperature. Today, 65, tomorrow, 69, then 80s, 87 on Sunday. So you got to have an air conditioning and heating unit that pulls it all together. That's L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. One-day installation, no stress, personal service from start to finish. They got it installed at our house, and it was absolutely fantastic. Our home is comfortable no matter the weather, and with L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, we got peace of mind. Here's some of the deals they're working on right now. Free programmable thermostat, carbon monoxide detector with new furnace or air conditioner installation. No emergency charges, $0 trip fee, price match value guarantee on equipment, free estimates, licensed and insured, and a 5-year labor warranty. Everything works great. Our family couldn't be happier. So if you're looking for fast, honest, reliable service, I highly recommend L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Here's their phone number, 720-851-1691, 720-851-1691, online at bestdenverhvac.com. That's bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called them. That number again, 720-851-1691. Gentlemen, I think he's jumping on here any second, so check that out. I just got word from his assistant that Pastor Russell Johnson will be joining us. In the meantime, while you guys get that set up, let's talk Colorado Farm Bureau Federation, folks. Look, you guys know that water here in Colorado is gold, right? There's an old saying in Colorado, whiskey's for drinking, but water's for fighting. Well, whether you pulled out your skis or snowmobiles this last winter, it was a great year for winter fun. But the snow means even more to Colorado agriculture, and I want you to know that our state's farmers and ranchers are doing their part to protect our future water resources. The people of Colorado agriculture always have conservation, efficiency, and reuse top of mind when it comes to water use as the metro area continues to grow. Colorado Farm Bureau leads talks with state policymakers about preserving water for all areas of the state as pressure on the water system grows. Look, it's going to take all of us to find a solution. My friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau are leaders in water conservation and water policy. They understand how to balance water for crops and water for families, and they're doing more with less. You could do your part. I recommend you join and become a member today. Go to coloradofarmbureau.com to join those good people there. That's coloradofarmbureau.com to join them.
Now, Jeff, I want to just interrupt
Yes.
before now the guests should be joining here in a second. We're working with the video room, but I want to kind of talk about the Seattle mayor for a sec, and where I believe that he got it wrong is I fundamentally believe that we have people now in America that have decided that some speech is violence and some violence is speech. And what I mean by that is when the Seattle mayor talks to the original protesters, the Christian protesters, and says that you're part of the violence and you were part of the antagonism, he is viewing the Christians' speech as violence. And then when he excuses the anti-protesters, Antifa and everybody else that showed up there, and excuses them for being violent, from all the reporting that we've seen, it was them that got violent first. The protest in response to the protest. So I'm calling them the anti-protesters, just for the conversation. The information we have is that the anti-protesters got violent first, and the Seattle mayor is interpreting that violence as free speech. So again, we're going to review. This is the mistake I believe the Seattle mayor is making, and he's wrong. And this is made over and over again. He has decided that the Christian protesters' speech is violence, and then he's decided the anti-protesters' violence is speech. So that's how he's rationalized that, and he's
Bill,
wrong. We saw that in the universities
right.
as well. He's wrong.
Bill, let's go to a break now. We'll come back with Pastor Russell Johnson. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Joining us now, Pastor Russel Johnson. He's the lead pastor, Pursuit NW up in Seattle. They're the ones facing this crazy mayor who's blaming them. You and your Christian values are the reason why Antifa gets so worked up and creates violent acts. Now, yesterday, the pastor held a rattle in Seattle on the steps of the Seattle City Hall. And I'm interested to see how that's going.
Can I tell you I'm jealous about the fact that he can say rattle in Seattle? We don't have anything that rhymes with Denver.
I know.
Can't do that. It's a little depressing.
Pastor, thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Well, and I know your voice is shot because you were out on this protest yesterday. Tell us what happened last night. We've updated folks on what happened in the original rally that was held, the counter protest, but then you guys are trying to send a message to the mayor of Seattle, and you organized last night, and we're seeing video that Antifa even showed up against you there. Give us an update on what happened last night.
Yeah, we put together this rally in about 36 hours and didn't really know exactly all who was going to show up. By the time that we got there, the cops had shut down the street, put up security fencing on either side, and they told us that we had about 2,000 at the rally and 1,000 that they turned away because it was too dangerous for them to get in. People were walking down the street trying to get into this rally in front of City Hall and getting physically assaulted by Antifa on the street. And so the cops at some point ended up just closing it down. So I've just been blown up today by people who are like, oh man, we tried to get in and we couldn't. Can we do it again? And I'm like, well, I don't know. We might need to. But no, it was incredible. We rallied for about 2.5 hours in front of City Hall. And even the police who were there had told me that they had never seen something like this done at City Hall before. One of them told me, he said, "You said the quiet part out loud." He goes, "That doesn't happen here." So we took the fight right to the doorsteps of the mayor, called him out, said it was either time to apologize or resign. Different people speaking, and a couple thousand Christians with 24-hour notice who gathered to help us. And just like on Saturday, completely peaceful on our end, arrests and craziness on the other end of things. We had to, it's like they had to call them not literally, but it felt like they had to call in the National Guard to even get our team safely evac'd out of that place after the rally. Cops are running everywhere. People are getting hit. People are on the ground. I got staff members who are texting me like, I'm on stage speaking at the rally, and they're like, I just got hit. I'm on the ground. Can somebody come, get me out? It's like a war zone for the high crime of singing worship songs in front of City Hall and calling on the mayor to resign. So, I probably should have called it Battle in Seattle for how chaotic it was.
That's ridiculous.
We're talking with Russel Johnson. He's the lead pastor at Pursuit NW. Now, Pastor, we're in Denver, and we see Antifa, and we see similar things, but it hasn't risen to this level of violence. I know we've only got a few more minutes. I want to ask you, what's changing? Why is Antifa, the LGBTQ crowd up there, choosing to use violence against Christians?
Yeah, we haven't really seen this type of, at least in our part in Seattle, that type of really intense violence since the days of Top Chaz, where they had taken over Capitol Hill and had really camped out there and set up their own kind of miniature city within a city. And then it seemed to kind of die off some during the Biden years. So I don't know if it's the fact that Trump's been reelected or what. But see, in Seattle, it's just like the playground for like when you're in elementary school. Antifa has gotten used to being the bully that can show up, do whatever the heck they want, push you around, and there's never been a consequence. The city celebrates them. They get treated like no big deal, even though they've done tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions in property damage. The people always get arrested and then released 24 hours later on their own personal recognizance, no bail, no consequences. The judges won't do anything. The prosecutors won't prosecute. It's rinse, repeat. The cops arrest them, and then the system lets them out, and then they get celebrated by left-wing politicians. They've never really had a group that's pushed back and said, you're not going to bully us. We're not going to cower to you. And on top of that, we're going to call your political cover out. And I think that's what's pissing them off. And they think they run the city. And in one sense, they do, because the mayor provides political cover for them. I mean, and again, I'm not complaining about it. I knew what we signed up for. But I got church people getting hit in the head with all sorts of objects, with fists, getting pushed, spit on, kicked, just like literally assaulted. Cops are doing best that they can, but they just operate with impunity.
And Pastor, this is while you guys were there singing worship songs and just 100%. Exercising your free speech. Now, this is real quickly, hate to interrupt, but what I hear from this is the argument of, hey, it's her fault because she was wearing that short skirt. That Antifa is coming to you saying, well, if you weren't doing this, I wouldn't have assaulted you. That's crap. I can't believe it, sir. Continue.
Yeah, that's totally it. And not only is that crap, that was the official press release from Mayor Bruce Harrell's office. This is your fault. Your fault. Because you should know that you can't come to Seattle and bring values that are different than Seattle's values. Wow. I mean, the city has gone in the wrong direction in every measurable metric that exists. Yeah, you know, Antifa is a bunch of petulant, overgrown children who are coddled by our liberal government and emboldened by the mayor running cover for them as they physically assault people, and then the mayor downplays it. And they think they can just push us around, vandalize our building, or punch a couple of our people, and then we're going to go back to our church and hide in it. And I was like, no, we're not. You don't run this city. You're the disease in this city. And we're going to take a stand against this. And right in the middle of our rally is when, you know, the FBI announced that, you know, Seattle is officially under investigation for violating constitutional rights of religious people. And when we made that announcement right during that rally, the place exploded. It was crazy.
Wow. Russell Johnson, lead pastor at Pursuit NW. Thank you so much for taking time. I know it's been a crazy few days to give us some of your perspective. Helps us here. We're continuing to pray for you. Thank you for representing Christ well, doing that peacefully up there, but standing strong. Follow Russell Johnson on X at Russell B. Johnson for the latest on this. Thank you, Pastor.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. You've been listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.